Hello, welcome to the Katie Halper Show. I'm your host, Lula. I look different. I'm your host, Lula, and I'm guest co-hosting. I'm guest hosting for Katie Halper, and yeah, I'm free. Just kidding. I am Katie Halper, not Lula. Not to be confused with the Brazilian, um, newly freed Brazilian leader. It's Katie Halper. It's the Katie Halper Show. Welcome to the show. What do I have to say? Let's see. If you're watching live, please, please like the stream, share the stream, subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. What else can you do? You can join our Patreon at patreon.com/the Katie Halper Show. Again, that's patreon.com/the Katie Halper Show. You know, I'm looking, and the cable thing that's usually plugged in is not. So I hope I'm not lagging too much. We're on Wi-Fi, not Ethernet. Is it okay? Not sure why that is. But all of this stuff is the stuff that you usually don't get on any other show, but except for here. So you're welcome. And good evening, everyone. And we have a wonderful show. We have with us. Well, first of all, I do have to confess to something. I have this thing right here, and this is not a prop. She's not a prop. I'm not going to bring her out the whole time, but I did have to. She's with me for a little bit because my parents aren't here, and she looked very sad alone. So when my parents come back, they'll pick her up. But in case you see or hear any panting, it's from Bodhi, who's on my lap. She also may try to paw me and scratch me and try to get me to. So if anything happens, like anything gets unhooked, that's why. But I don't think you're the cause of the Wi-Fi unhook. Anyway, so very excited to be here. We're going to have two amazing guests on tonight. Victor Pougy, who is a journalist in and from Brazil, as well as Danny Spirit of Ho Haiphong, who is a journalist based and from New York City. And so we're going to be talking about Brazil stuff with Victor, and we're going to be talking about anti-Asian racism and the new Cold War with Danny. But before that, we're going to be talking about the really important stuff with Leslie Lee, who's going to tell us all about what's happening this week in pop culture. Leslie Lee, welcome.
Hey, how's it going, Katie?
Good, you?
I'm doing good, doing good. Thank you so much for having me here once again. Happy to
Of course.
be with the Katie Halper faithful, these loyal little fans you have.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, they're the best. And Leslie, of course, is the host of the Struggle Session podcast. And I'll be doing one of your streams this weekend, correct?
Yes, this weekend. So it's going to be a charity stream for anybody who's a fan of the TV show *Halt and Catch Fire*. There will actually be an online convention this weekend for *Halt and Catch Fire*. Just follow me on Twitter at Leslie Lee III. And all the information will be posted there on my timeline. But Katie too. I'll send Katie the flyer and everything. But we will be doing a live struggle session episode with special guests Katie Halper and Lenny Burnham to talk about *Halt and Catch Fire*, this AMC TV show about all the various tech booms we've gone under.
Yeah, it's really good. And someone already asked in the questions if you're going to talk about the Snyder Cut. And I'm going to be clear. I'm going to be transparent. I don't know what that is. And in fact, Leslie, when I asked what we should talk about in this section, that was, you knew. You have your finger on the pulse of
I knew that we had to, because it's the biggest thing going in pop culture right now. If you want to hear my full thoughts on it, of course, you can check me out at Struggle Session, SESH. +sesh.plus or patreon.com/struggle session. We already got a great episode taped about the movie. But briefly, Katie, so back in 2017, they were going to do a movie of the Justice League. The Justice League are basically Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, like the Avengers, but for DC, right? DC Comics. And the studio was very unhappy with the director who made the movie and fought him a lot. They wanted to get the movie down to like 2 hours or even less than that. And he was like, no, it has to be at least 3 hours. And so there was a lot of back and forth about that. And then his daughter tragically passed away while, in the final weeks of when they were supposed to finish up this movie. And so what happened was they brought in this Joss Whedon, who we talked about on the show before, to finish the movie. This is before he was really canceled. People still knew what an asshole he was, but this is before he actually got canceled. And they brought him in to finish the movie, but what he actually did was basically rewrote the script of an already finished movie, chopped it up into little bits that made no sense whatsoever. Did a bunch of really awful, ugly looking reshoots, and just they ended up releasing this really awful movie that no one was happy with, no one liked, because they didn't trust the vision of the original director. And then it came out, of course, that Joss Whedon was abusive to some of the cast while making this movie, and that Jeff Johns and Walter Hamada, big wigs up at WB, the biggest wigs at WB, were sort of complicit in this, and they recently so. Fast forward a couple years, the fans, Zack Snyder starts posting all the stuff that wasn't in the cut that came out in theaters. People thought, oh, Josh just tinkered a few things, but in reality, they basically threw away like almost 3/4 of the movie, while when it was finished, and Zach kept posting all this stuff, and the fans were piecing it together. It's like there's like an hour plus of stuff missing, and so fans started demanding to see his version, and he confirmed that he had a version of the movie that was very different from the actual film that was released in theaters. And eventually the studio kind of was bullied by the fans into allowing Zack Snyder to return to the movie, finish his version, and they actually ponied up $70 million to finish the visual effects and pay for a couple of extra reshoots. So after all that, this movie basically took 5 years to make. It finally comes out on HBO Max today, and it's actually quite good. People really do like it and enjoy it, because you take 5 years to make a movie, you might nail it,
Wow.
And they really did nail it. Lots of people are pretty happy with it and happy about the journey. They're very happy because this version of the film restores like all the black characters and all the women that Joss Whedon like basically cut out of the movie.
He cut them out? He canceled them?
He cut out basically every black character. There was a Asian American character that was introduced in this version that he completely erased, not even a single frame. And he was supposed to be like a superhero. He's supposed to be the Atom, basically the DC version of Ant-Man. So he did a complete hatchet job on it, besides being abusive to the
people
IRL. So it's just a happy moment for the fans of this movie, because it's actually like one of the. I understand most people are probably sick of superhero movies, but I think this is probably like the best one so far. It is about 4 hours long, but it's the one that most feels like actually reading a comic book. So if you're actually into comic books and the lore and stuff, like this is a good time, and it's nice to have some good new content.
Yeah.
Is about to have good new content there that you can enjoy, that you can have fun with, and something exciting and something positive that people are happy about. This very personal tragedy mixed with studio meddling, mixed with Me Too, and it was just all this negative stuff turned out finally into something that was pretty positive for a lot of people.
Wow. Good new content. GNC. Is that what you said? Good new content?
Yes, good new content.
Right, yeah, I like that. By the way, you want to do what's the thing in the corner of what's that box, by the way?
Oh, this is the taco cam.
Oh, you got a taco cam. Oh my God, where are you trying to show Bodie? Oh my God.
I'm just saying, well, he is a part. Well, this is my regular setup for a struggle session, which you can check us out most days at twitch.tv/struggle session. In fact, tomorrow we're going to have a huge guest, professional wrestler Allison Kay will be joining us there.
I can't believe they didn't try to do my show first, because I'm like the wrestling podcast. No.
Well, but please, and Taco is a regular member, and every time we get a sub, Taco gets a treat. So that's how it works.
That's how you see my trailer with Bodie? That's how she's the one who pushes people to do the Patreon.
Oh yeah, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah, because she's right here. Did I already tell you that? Did you know this?
Yes, I saw. See, Taco demanded his own camera. He doesn't like to be. He's not a lap dog. He likes to be on his own, doing his own thing, but he still wants to be in the spotlight. And I have to keep moving the camera around whenever he moves.
That is so funny. Or else he barks or something. She does this thing where if I'm like stop rubbing her, she'll scratch. She'll claw at you.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She's very spoiled. Yeah. Well, okay. So, you want to give me a quick quiz? I'll show you. Here's an interesting thing. I have no idea what the difference between DC and Marvel is. Is there like
Okay.
a rule of thumb? Is there like a basic difference between them? Before you tell me the individual ones, I want to see if there's a logic to it that lets me figure out.
It's kind of a post facto logic, but I would say the Marvel superheroes tend to be more attempt to ground it in the real world. They operate in New York City, a real city,
Thank
for the
you.
most part.
A real city. New York being a real
No,
city.
I didn't mean it that way
Yep.
whatsoever.
My Yankee ways are
Didn't
rubbing
mean
off on
it
the
that way
Southern gentleman.
whatsoever. While DC, their heroes tend to be more mythological leaning. They take place in fictional cities. Their
Like
world
Los
is a better.
Angeles.
And like 9/11 didn't happen in DC, but it did happen in Marvel.
Got it.
That's
okay,
a good
so
difference.
DC is more fictional and Marvel is more grounded, you're saying?
Yes,
Somewhat.
yes.
Okay,
But I
so
don't mean it as like a compliment. I don't mean I want to be clear. That's not like a compliment to
Right.
Marvel necessarily.
Okay, so throw me a character and let me see if I can figure it out.
Okay, Spider-Man.
See, I'm also so ignorant of them that this, let's see, Spider-Man, I'm going to go with
Where does Spider-Man live?
New York City. Okay, so that would make it, hold on, Marvel.
There you go. There you go. All right. Wonder Woman.
DC.
Yes.
I'm so good at this. It's really your teaching that's so good now.
Okay, Captain America.
I just want to say Marvel, but I don't know why.
It is Marvel. Iron Man.
Does he live in New York City too? No. He's just a wanderer.
I think so. I think
Oh.
he has headquarters in New York City. I'll say that.
Marvel?
Yes, Marvel.
I think
Okay.
I could be one of those characters. I think I'm Wonder Woman.
Batman.
Oh, it has to be Marvel, right?
Batman? Where does Batman live?
Oh no, wait! It's what do they call it? What's it called? The city?
It's a nickname that New York has stolen
Gotham.
for
Gotham.
itself.
That's why I was New York City identifying it. But thank you for I'm coming correct, and I'm checking my New York City privilege. We are not Gotham. Gotham isn't real. So
Yes.
that would have to be DC.
Yes. The Flash.
That is not real. So I'll say DC.
DC, correct.
Oh, Leslie, you're brilliant. You have to run a course called How to Tell the Difference Between
Marvel
Marvel
and
and
DC. All right. The Punisher. Now,
Oh,
I'll give you a hint
okay,
if you
give me a
don't.
hint.
What he does, what's his superpower is that he buys a bunch of guns and shoots mobsters up. That's his superpower.
in cities that are made. You can't tell me, right?
It may be too much.
It would
The
just
way
be
you
too.
the way you think if he's going around shooting up mafioso, where are you gonna do that at?
New York City.
Only,
All
of
right,
course.
so Marvel.
Yes.
Thank
yes,
you.
yes.
Wow. And wow. Well, thank you so much. All right. Well, anything else you want to get into before we? It was really helpful, right? Go, Leslie. That's called the Leslie method. Let's make some books on tape where you do that. Doris.
So you can fake your way through
Yeah.
a quiz show. Yeah.
How to fake your way, how to fake it until you make it as a superheroes movie fan. Is that what they're called? Are those superheroes?
Yeah,
Comic books movies?
they can usually call them superhero movies, but most people are really mostly into the MCU, the Marvel one more than the DC one, almost to the exclusion. So people are get very wrapped up in the MCU, which is movies, and now there's TV shows. WandaVision, you've probably heard about.
Yeah, of course.
WandaVision.
I
They got a
reviewed that
new-
with Bree without having seen it. Yeah.
Oh, but yeah, they got a whole big galaxy over there, and some people are just into it in a way that has no real It's like no real connection to comic books or even necessarily superheroes, but just they like the MCU for what it is.
Okay, I think the theme here is that Washington, D.C. always gets the shaft. Doesn't have representation.
There are a couple of DC superheroes, but they're all goofy.
Goofy,
No,
yeah.
there's no Is there any good fiction aside from political thrillers set in DC? Like there's just nothing to do there except like politics and like
The president is missing,
shove
right?
like shove journalists in front of trains and stuff like
Right,
that. Like that's
right.
the only thing you can do in DC.
And also, the president is missing, right? The Bill Clinton mystery that he wrote with James
Yeah,
Patterson, where his wife is.
wife is dead. His wife
That's
is
the
dead.
fiction. It's not fantasy as in like that genre, but that is what Bill Clinton would like to write about in his
Yeah,
spare
that's his
time.
fantasy. Is that he wrote a book about a president whose
His
wife is
wife is
dead.
dead.
He's a widower.
I know. Well, a boy can dream, I guess. Anyway, well, we are going to get to our first guest. Are you ready for this, Leslie? You ready to go to Brazil?
Oh yes.
All right. He is a producer of System Update with Glenn Greenwald. He is a journalist based in and from Brazil. He's been on the show before, and his name is Victor Pougy. Victor, you there? Hey, Victor,
Hi,
how are
Katie.
you? How's it
Hi,
going?
Katie. Hi, Leslie.
Hey,
It's a
how's it
pleasure
going,
to be
Victor?
here.
Yeah,
Hey,
thanks for joining us
before
again.
we start, I just want to say that the struggle session episode on the Wonder Woman 1984 with Q, it was awesome. I love Q. I love the podcast, so it was really
Oh,
good.
thank you so much, Victor. I really appreciate it. Very bad movie, but fun time.
Yeah, but
fun
it's
time
fun
talking
to talk
about
bad
it.
movies, right?
You got QAnon? You guys are Q fans? Oops, there's a
A different Q Anthony.
okay, got it.
Not DQ. He's associate, I'm sure though. He's probably a pretty close associate of the actual Q.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Victor, thank you again for joining us. And a lot of people are very curious about what's happening in Brazil. Some exciting news. Can you give us a system update, if you will? An update on the situation there?
Yeah, just before we start, I want to say that Sunday, March 14th, we've reached the sad mark of 3 years since Marielle Franco was assassinated here in Brazil, and still no answers in that. So just putting out there. I
And can
encourage
you tell
everyone.
people who
Yeah,
Maria Franco was? Yeah.
yeah. She was an activist. She hails from the favelas, the poor communities here in Rio. She was, it's still hard to talk about her in the past tense. She was a black woman who was elected to city council. She was a very stringent denouncer of police brutality, particularly in poor communities here in Brazil. And she was brutally assassinated, like with 5 shots to her head by some very professional killers, and we still don't know the circumstances around that. And there's a lot of questions unanswered still.
And she was killed along with her bodyguard or driver.
Yeah, she was killed along with her driver and an aide who was with her and didn't die. She survived. She got a shot to her leg or something, still living in hiding in fear. And because she doesn't know who she's hiding from, because we don't know what happened. So still definitely no closure in there. I encourage everyone who's interested in check out the Marielle Franco Institute. They do good work. So yeah.
And she was and you knew her personally?
No, I mean, I've seen her at speeches and
Okay.
we've been to events with her, but I don't have any claim to say that I was a friend of close to her. I was certainly an admirer and a voter, but I never actually met her very well.
Got it. I know I thought because you work with Glenn and David that and they're close friends with her, so I thought maybe you were also, but
Yeah, I mean, we're always in the same spaces, but
right.
we never really developed a close relationship,
Well, sorry.
unfortunately. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't know it was in a hurry. Right?
Yeah. And what are some of the possibilities of who killed her? And she was a black woman and also LGBT.
Yeah.
So member of 2 communities. I mean, especially now with Bolsonaro in power, the LGBTQ community. In fact, well, you talk about it because I was going to talk about John Willis, but you should tell the story.
Yeah. Okay. So the first openly gay congressperson to be elected here in Brazil was a man called John Willis, who was forced to flee the country after getting so many death threats and having basically his life made unbearable here in Brazil by. He was like the #1 target for conservatives and for the far right. And, although he was basically chased out of the country and gone into hiding, basically, he was still like he was the first and who was for a long time the only openly gay politician in Brazil. But there's actually a pretty big cohort of people who were elected, kind of like standing on his shoulders, and then standing on the shoulders of Marielle, who was also a very, very inspiring figure. And Marielle, she was her main line of work, although she was, you know, involved in many, many things, and she was very well known by her close relationship with social movements. So she was not the kind of politician who would sit in her office at the government branch and do the work, but she'd be around town going, talking to people and meeting with social movements. And her last night, she was at one such event with meeting with like Black women from the favelas and talking about building relationships and how they could help each other. And as she was leaving that event, her car was tailed and she was shot. And it was a very, very professional thing with like very high caliber and expensive and very dangerous weapons used. And it was all very professionally made. And she was a very, very strong denouncer of police brutality. One of her last speeches, she finishes by saying how many of us are going to need to die before this war ends. And her work with denouncing police brutality has won her many enemies amongst police officers. And as your audience probably knows, there's a big problem with militias growing here in Rio, which are mostly composed of former police officers. They do kind of a mafia thing, right? Here in Brazil, for many decades, there was this idea that on these poor neighborhoods where the state doesn't really reach, there's no services, so people have kind of to fend for themselves. And for many decades, these were ended up being controlled by drug traffickers. But in the last decade, maybe decade and a half, we see the emergence of these militias, which work pretty much like a mafia in that they charge and provide services to these communities. So they would have a monopoly on cable TV or cooking gas deliveries, and they extort people very much like mafias do. And Marielle had a very sharp eye towards this. She was involved in a huge investigation on these militias as an aide to another left-wing politician here in Brazil. She was the person responsible for kind of like his work in that committee. There was a committee to investigate these militias. And she became an enemy of these militias, basically. And most people suspect, and it's very reasonable to think so, that her assassination was done by these militias. But again, the investigations have been kind of running in circles, and there's this very clear sense that there's someone interested in not really pulling these threads very far, because probably important people are going to be involved in that. And yeah, still no answers. And her family and her aide, who was in the car with her and was injured and still hasn't been able to get her life back because they don't even know who they're supposed to be hiding from.
Wow, that's really scary. And this is her, by the way, obviously, but this is the photo. So she was really like vibrant, young.
And she was very young, which is something rare in Brazilian politics. And she was also not from the same elite places where most politicians and where I come from. So she didn't go like to great schools when she was a kid, and she didn't like take English courses ever since she was a child. And she had to work. She was a single mom and juggling all these things. And she, by just sheer strength of character and by her, amazed, she was an extremely, extremely capable person, not only of, understanding the complexities of politics, but also very good at building relationships, because at the end of the day, a lot of politics has to do with building relationships between movements and between her party and other parties and building coalitions. And she was very good at doing that. She had good relationships even with the far right members of the the Chamber of Deputies who would like mock her for being lesbian behind her back and this kind of thing. But she, at the end of the day, would be able to get their votes and important things and build coalition and do politics as politics needs to be done. So it's a very, very sad loss. It's been 3 years, and still we're not over it still, and we're still waiting for answers.
And then John Willis, when he left, then it was. Is this correct that David replaced him because he was his? David Miranda's.
David Miranda is Glenn Greenwald's husband. He was also he has a very similar story to Marielle. They were really close, and they were amongst the two of them were like the only gay people in the Congress of Deputies, Chamber of Deputies. They were the only Black people, and they were the only people who came not from these elite spaces like everyone else. So they were very close. But then David ran for Congress. So this was in a city level, and David ran for Congress in a federal level, country level. And it's kind of like a party vote. So each party, depending on the amount of votes they get, they have an X number of seats, right? So they had his party got 5 seats, and one of them was John Willis, as we were saying. But then when he couldn't bear anymore this horrid life that he was living, having to hide from everyone and things like that, he left the country. So the 6th person, who was just underneath that threshold, was David. So everyone got bumped up one. David got into Congress by that. So at least the only gay man in Congress got replaced by another one. So
yeah.
And
both of them were not from the elite class, right? And
yeah, exactly. Which is very rare in Brazil.
So
just seeing anyone who's not white doing anything of like consequence in Brazil is very rare, because there's a lot of gatekeeping. And hopefully, Marielle, when she was murdered, she had obviously a fantastic team of people together with her, and now a lot of the people who are in this team are also running and doing their own thing. So at least this, like, the work didn't stop. In fact, the reverse, it's getting multiplied.
That's great. They have bodyguards. I mean, I guess
they
can't.
I can't afford not to, but I'm sure they do take extreme care. I obviously am not privy to the details of their security, but I'm sure they are taking care.
Wow. Well, we're going to talk to you in a second about. Thank you, by the way, for reminding everyone about that and for sharing that. We're going to talk to Victor some more about Bolsonaro and what just happened with Lula. But before we do that, I would just like to thank some new patrons, and those people who I'm going to thank are Tom Novick. Can this be bigger? Let's see. Oops, no, wrong thing. Here we go. Ready, guys? Hold on, please. Okay, I can't. Not really. Alrighty. There's a cool, like, 1980s type of app open on my laptop right now. I'm trying to read. New patrons. Tom Novick. Thank you. Thank you so much. Claire Tal. Oh, wait. I'm not reading. I'm just going to read the first name and then the last letter. Okay. Tom N. Thank you. Claire T. Thank you. Christine C. Thank you. Daniel S. Thank you. Let's see. Jack M. Thank you. Leslie, do you have any coaching for me on this? Sometimes I can do it, sometimes I can't. I feel like I'm just not nailing it.
From Alibaba,
you're not nailing it. Just go. Just full confidence.
Okay. Rev Edmund B. Thank you. Hallelujah, Rev. Carl L. We have nothing to lose but our chains by supporting this show. You like that, what I did with Carl? Okay. Sean M. Sean, it is so good to see you. Zach G. G, that is just great. Wow. Chuck S. Chuck, I'm chuckling over here. That's how moved I am. I'm chuckling with verklemtness. Tamara B. Tomorrow is just another day, but today we got Tamara. How do you like that? Okay,
pretty good.
it's good, right? Heather R. Heathers is a great movie, and Heather R is a great woman. Michael E. Michael. Yeah. I don't know. Michael E. Michael E. E as in eternal, because that's what you are. Okay. Jonathan H. Maybe a common first name, but it's certainly not a common person. Sophia B. Sophia B. Good. Eileen. Come on, Eileen. Actually, you already came on. You did it. You did the deed. I don't need to coax you anymore. Corey D. Corey D. D, D, D. D is for the depth of my gratitude. Eddie S. Some of these people, their last name really has a lot there, but I can't do that now. But I'll just say Eddie. Eddie, Eddie, Eddie. Eddie S. S stands for sincere. Sincerely grateful, which is what I am to you. And Lisa A. Just Lisa. Remember Lisa?
Yes, and
Yeah.
Colt Jam. Very
Yeah.
good band.
There you go, yeah. Okay, great. So I think that's about it. How do we feel about that? Oh, and I was trying to get someone to. Oh, this is so sweet and sad. I was trying to get Brad, or say hi to Brad, everyone. Say hi to Brad, Maria, Nick, and Kelly. We have a full house. But Victor
Oh,
is in
yeah.
the private chat too, and he sent. So I can show this. It's public, right, Victor?
Well, yeah.
That photo.
It is.
Okay, 1 second.
Yeah. I pulled it from a news article. So.
Great, thank you. 1 second, sorry. Okay. Sorry. Okay, this is like a really moving photo of Marielle with. Hold on. I'm going to show it, and then you can tell us who everyone is. Share screen. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's. Do you want to tell people who?
Yeah, well, the children are Glenn and David's kids, and it's David on the left and Marielle, from left to right, David, Marielle, and then that's Monica Benicio, who was Marielle's widow and who just got elected to the city council here in Rio. She's a fantastic person. She's an urbanist, and she really knows a lot about city development and the urban dynamics. And it's really interesting to have someone from this area who's also from the favelas, who are the underserved urban areas here in Rio. So she's doing a really good job. And then there's Glenn and a dog, as always.
So cute. Yeah. Well, that's a sweet photo. So that's great that she's not been silenced or run out or scared.
Yeah. I mean, there's really a lot of seeds spread out from Marielle who are blossoming now, and hopefully, going to keep working.
Well, so we didn't even get to this other part, which is the kind of the other side of it. Bolsonaro, who represents the other side, obviously, of this political spectrum. What's happening with him, and also with Lula?
Yeah, so there was this big decision last week of consequence to Lula. So if I'm just allow me to do a quick recap for everyone.
Yeah.
Lula was arrested.
Lula, the former president of Brazil, right?
Former president of Brazil. He's a former union leader who came from a very poor background, and as a lot of Brazilians did, he was born in the northeast of Brazil and in the remote areas. If we want to call places remote, it's always about reference, right? Like it's remote for us who are here, but thought of as remote. And as a lot of Brazilians, he emigrated very young to Sao Paulo. Tried to get opportunities, and so he started working in factory working and became a union organizer from that. Organized an enormous general strike here in Brazil during the military dictatorships. One of the factors that ended up helping push the military out of power and reinstate mass democracy here. So he hails from the Metal Workers Union, and then he, with the unions and with these urban intellectuals, and in an alliance with some peasant movements, they've founded the Workers' Party in the 80s, and had been like building into one of the most important parties in the world. I would argue, definitely the largest left-wing party in Latin America. And what is remarkable about that party is that it not only grew, but it was actually able to take power. Because I feel like in the left, there's like many stories about like these amazing organizations that are so beautiful, but don't end up taking power, and we get like so like inspired by losing, right? And there's a lot of this tendency among the left of being romantic about lost causes, whereas we should be interested in actually taking power and actually materially changing reality. And so this is what is most remarkable about Lula and the Workers' Party, which is that after running many consecutive elections, he was elected president in 2002, re-elected in 2006, left the office in 2010. So these are all 4-year cycles, right? Left the office with like 85% approval, managed to get his handpicked successor elected, who was Dilma Rousseff, a fantastic woman as well. She was a Marxist guerrilla in the military dictatorship. She was arrested and tortured, never gave up any names, even under torture. So that's the kind of person she is. But then we had she was elected and re-elected again. But then we have Lava Jato in 2013, which was an anti-corruption task force hailing from a very small town here in the south of the country, not a place who is usually associated to big, momentous political developments. And it was initially about investigating some shady financial dealings related to Petrobras, the Brazilian public oil company, a giant and very big thorn on the side of these global oil companies. And then Brazil discovered like these huge oil deposits, and then Petrobras became the focus of a lot of international politicking around, and a lot of what Snowden revealed in 2013 and shows that. But anyways, in 2013, we have this the start of this anti-corruption task force that started pulling a thread or somehow, and then kind of the whole house of cards of Brazilian politics kind of crumbled underneath it. And a lot of people will say that the task force started as a virtuous endeavor that was corrupted in the middle. Some other people will say no, it was a political hit job from the start. But the mainstream narrative goes that, the mainstream narrative that is critical of Lava Jato, the mainstream narrative right. That is in praise of Lava Jato will just say, oh, they were great people doing great work and the corrupt establishment crushed them. But we're all adults here. We know that this is not the case. It was, at some point, they became obsessed with destroying Lula and the Workers' Party, right? In their minds, combating corruption became equal to combating the Workers' Party. So at some point, they get obsessed with Lula, and Lula goes to jail. But in 2018, Lula was set to run because, as we know, Lula was elected in 2002 and 2006, and then Dilma in 2010, 2014. 2016, Dilma was impeached in what most people would consider a parliamentary coup. And then 2018, after 2 years of Dilma's vice president who betrayed her governing, we were due to new presidential elections, and Lula was the clear favorite to win. Big majority. very popular, was probably going to win. But then he goes to jail and is stopped from running because of a law that was passed during the Workers' Party government, which says that if you have been convicted of a crime, you're not allowed to hold political office. And he gets convicted in these very slimy, very dubious proof. In a way, it's not really proof, but you can see that they were trying to build this case. But the result that is of consequence is that he's in jail, unable to run, and Bolsonaro has the lane wide open to win. When Bolsonaro wins, the judge who convicted Lula and who was the judge heading the Lava Jato operation was picked by Bolsonaro to become the justice minister. So you can see the very problematic quid pro quo there. A judge makes a decision that says Lula goes to prison and cannot run. Because Lula is in prison and cannot run, Bolsonaro wins, and then Bolsonaro goes and rewards that judge with the position of justice minister. But as you know, last year, or was it 2019, being stuck at home has kind of warped my sense of time, but we at The Intercept start reporting on these documents that show, with no reasonable doubt, clearly shows that the prosecution, the anti-corruption task force, was very biased against Lula, and so was the judge. So you can see the prosecutor and the judge cooperating, which is something you wouldn't even want to see it at like traffic court, right? Right. You wouldn't want to see the people who are accusing you and the people who are going to decide if you're guilty or not being buddies and exchanging tips and saying, oh, maybe you shouldn't use this roof, use that other one, it's better. Oh, are you sure you're going to do this? Wait, what? You know, the whole thing. And you can also see the way that they were working the media, trying to get these bombastic headlines. And it becomes very clear that it was a very sophisticated way of not only playing the law and playing politics, but also playing the media spectacle game with these very big, media events with like a bunch of cameras following everything, all of that stuff. So now we know, by having read the leaks that we published at The Intercept last year, that the task force was corrupt and that they were obsessed with getting Lula, regardless of what the material proof said.
Yeah, the evidence was, yeah.
Yeah. So this was the picture until 2 weeks ago. Bolsonaro was president. He was basically unopposed, right? He was winning by default because there was no one doing proper opposition against him. Because the way that Bolsonaro got elected was that a lot of people like to blame it on the left or on the center left. But the issue is that the center left got and the left got about the same chunk of votes in every election, like in the first round, because we do like they do in France. Maybe people will be familiar with it, runoff elections. So everyone runs in the first round and then second round to decide who's going to be president. So in the first round, the left got like about 40 to 45% of the vote in every election, and it was the same in 2018. But the thing is that the center right collapsed. The center right got sucked into the far right. So the center right party that usually polarized with the Workers' Party, so 45 to 45, and then the runoff, would be a small difference. They got 5% of the vote, and the center right, everyone just voted for Bolsonaro.
Yeah, that's a really important point that is not made often.
Yeah,
like you almost never hear that when people analyze what went wrong.
Yeah, exactly. It was the center right that collapsed, and the Bolsonaro, the far right, occupied that vacuum because there was no one to occupy because it was mainly a PT against whoever else, right?
The Workers' Party on the left.
Yeah,
Lula's party, right? Yeah.
Yeah. PT, Workers' Party on the left against whoever else gets to agglutinate the right-wing forces. And Bolsonaro, the most extreme right-wing person in government now around the world, I would wager. Maybe there's like a few people who are just as far right as him, but right up there on the top 5 of awful people in the world. Henry Kissinger doesn't count; it's like in a different category. And then, So we were in the situation in which Lula was barred. He was just out of the political game by forced out because he was legal, even though he had been released from jail already.
Yeah.
He was still convicted, but just not in jail yet. But then last week, a judge came and basically annulled the whole thing.
Wow.
And now Judge Lula's conviction is canceled, doesn't exist anymore, which is great news for everybody except for Bolsonaro. But there's some insidious stuff going on in there, which is a good to give a breakdown of, because although it was great for Lula and it was bad for Lava Jato, it was also seen as a maneuver to protect Lava Jato. So I'm going to explain you very briefly. So as I said in the beginning, this task force was based in a small city in the south of Brazil. And there was like a task force to investigate financial crimes related to Petrobras. So their jurisdiction was not a territorial jurisdiction like most of the justice in Brazil works. So if I go on the street, I'm in Rio de Janeiro, go on the street to kill someone, I'm going to be judged by the Rio de Janeiro justice. Lula lives in Sao Paulo.
Don't do it, Victor.
No, I have no plans for that. So Lula lives in Sao Paulo. Petrobras is in Rio de Janeiro, and politics happens in Brasilia. So why was this court in Curitiba judging all of this stuff, right? And they had to make the case that it had to do with Petrobras. Otherwise, they wouldn't have standing to judge it. I think that's how we call it in the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So this is how they claim to have standing, by saying that it was related to Petrobras financial crimes, even though by reading the leaked messages that they exchanged, we can now see that not even then they were convinced that it was the link was clear. But nonetheless, they got away with it for a long time. And that was years ago, and it just been going on like that. And Lula's defense and most of Lava Jato defendants, although for a lot of the people who were stuck in the Lava Jato NAD, there's very clear connections between the corruption, them, and Petrobras, right? So with Lula, it was just more egregious with everyone else. And then we released these messages by proving that the judge and the task force was biased, and they were not fair. They were bad referees, right? And then the Supreme Court was about to pick up and judge on that. And there was an understanding. Most people would think that the Supreme Court would decide in favor of Lula and declare the judge and the task force biased against Lula, right? So this was what most people who read the tea leaves would think that the Supreme Court was about to decide. So before they could decide that, this other judge who was pro Lava Jato did that thing where they said, you know what, this thing about Curitiba judging Lula, this is wrong. They don't have standing. So, throw it all out of the table, clear it all. So the whole judgment from day one with regards to Lula was annulled because the judge said Curitiba doesn't have standing to judge Lula.
Wow.
But most people were like, okay, but you only know that now, all these years later, so
Right.
what people think and what is a reasonable conclusion to reach is that, as we say here in Brazil, there's an expression that says you give away your rings so that you don't lose your fingers. So
Right.
he was giving away the rings, Lula, okay, Lula's judgment is not here, it's not bad, so that he could save his fingers, which were, let's not declare the Lava Jato task force as a whole biased.
Oh, I see. Right. So it's just a
then,
he did it on a technical issue.
Yeah, he was like,
Legal
okay, fine,
technicality,
whatever.
yeah.
Lula,
Technicality,
you're free. Go away, fine, Lula. You're not
Right.
convicted for this. You're innocent. Forget about the whole bias thing, right? There's
Right.
no harm done. This judgment is off. So who cares? But a lot of people care, and turns out that another judge in the Supreme Court who hates Lava Jato saying, screw that, I'm going to judge him as biased anyways. So that's still happening. But this was the maneuver that most people understand that happened, was that, yeah, fine, we lose Lula, the big trophy, but we get to keep the whole edifice of Lava Jato. Regardless of the judicial and shenanigans that happen, whatever it is. The reality is that Lula is now a free man. His convictions have been annulled. He's able to run for whatever he wants to run. He's never been convicted of anything. He has a clean slate. He gets to run. Fantastic. One day after that, he did a big speech that was basically just like a breath of fresh air into like reality in Brazil by just seeing like a normal person with a brain and like minimal levels of empathy and
Right.
politics, doing a speech about like everything, and you can see like the different game that they're playing, like how much more capable Lula is than possibly any politicians in the West, I would say. And I'm only saying the West because I don't know
Right.
the East that well, so maybe there's like some guy who's better than Lula. I don't want to like claim that
Yeah.
there isn't, but I know the West, and for sure,
No
maybe
disrespect to the
Obama
Lulas of the
is
East.
right there in political capacity and
Talent.
you
You're
know,
talking about like political talent.
yeah, raw
Yeah.
talent, like
Got
just
it.
knowing like what to say. And he did like a 2-hour speech without reading from anything and just hitting
Cass.
all the
I
buttons.
mean,
Yeah,
Fidel would outdid him on that,
yeah,
but still, it's still impressive. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, Fidel was always like 10-hour
Yeah.
speeches,
Exactly.
which is not something that we're ready to do here in Brazil.
Right.
But so he did that and was just like, look, we need to get these vaccines. Why the fuck has this guy not gotten any vaccines yet? And you just see that he was working, like he was doing the work a president should have done. So he got in calls with like the people in Russia who did the Sputnik
Yeah.
vaccine.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's just like working, right? And then immediately you could see that Bolsonaro was like, damn it. And like scrambling, they already replaced the health minister like yesterday. So we are in the fourth health minister in the just during COVID pandemic. There were 4 different health ministers. The previous guy was a general, however many star generals, and was just atrociously bad. But just now we just know that the whole board, the whole chessboard is appended, and now that Lula is like one of the voices in there. He's in there, and most people will say that, okay, fine. Now, before Lula was back in the game, the idea was like, okay, who's going to be the person who's going to go to runoff against Bolsonaro? Could we get anyone who's going to defeat him? And now the conversation has switched to, will Bolsonaro be able to beat whoever else and get to the second round with Lula? Or will the center-right be able to rebuild itself and polarize with Bolsonaro? Because before, Bolsonaro was polarizing with Lula in an imaginary sense because Lula wasn't there to be polarized with. And the center-right didn't really have anything like to present to anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now they have an enemy, Lula, and now Bolsonaro and whoever else is going to appear are fighting for that spot, like that other spot. So things are much different now. Just today, Lula did an interview with Alan Poor on CNN International,
Oh, wow.
in which he was like, "Hey, Biden, you should like do a G20 meeting and get like vaccines to the third world." You know, like
Yeah.
it's just like
No, they're not going to do that.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. But you know, like the president should be like calling him and asking for that.
Right. You're saying right. Bolsonaro
and then like one day after it came out that Lula had done that, like Bolsonaro came out and released a letter that like he had, you know, you're just
that was
seeing
like,
that.
Don't give any vaccines away, Biden.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And now we see that on a report actually by Brazil Wire, who is an independent outlet reporting about Brazil in English, that the U.S. State Department pressured the Brazilian government, pressured Bolsonaro not to buy the Sputnik vaccine. So now we don't have any of that because the department told them not to buy it.
The U.S. did that?
Yeah.
Leslie,
I mean, the U.S. is always doing so well for everyone else.
I know. It's so surprising.
Just looking out for you.
Just looking out for you. You don't want to be infected by Putin tainted life-saving vaccines. That would suck.
Yeah.
Better dead than red. Not that he's red, but you know, people are so fucking dumb. Yeah. Wow, yeah. Well, wow. Well, thank you for that great update. And anything else you want to say? Because I know you really appreciate how generous you've been with your time.
No, it's fine.
You're like, I have
Here in
nothing
Brazil,
to do.
most people are late, so the other thing I had going on just got delayed. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's fine. But
right.
I don't know. I talked so much and it was so rambly that I don't remember what I covered, what I didn't. But
No, it was
I don't know.
great. You have any questions, Leslie? Anyone in the chat have any questions?
Yeah, anyone
Everyone
in the
was very,
chat?
very impressed.
Yeah,
with
but
your-
everybody was very impressed, very
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
grateful
I
for
was
this
like, oh my God, like,
information.
what am I saying? Am I making any sense?
Oh no, it was
Apparently,
great. It was totally great. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Moscow Katie defiant is pushing the Russian backs. It's true. It's true.
Yeah, exactly.
What else? Anyone else have a there are some super chats. Let's see. Thank you, Victor. Thank you, KT. Thank you, Mega Arbuck. I think we highlighted them. But yeah, this is great, and so excited for Lula. Tell him, wow, yeah. Sorry, that's my impersonating how he talks.
First goes-
Obrigado. Obrigado. That's why you can only talk for 2 hours when your voice is like that. You can't
Yeah,
really.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because his
So-
voice is not real like that. He's forcing it, so he just gets really
Oh,
tired.
right, it's fake. Yeah, right. Yeah. What is? Who will win the election if Lula runs?
Look, here in Brazil, there's I feel like this is like Brazilian expressions.
No, it's
101,
good. What
but
do we
I
have?
another one
He's
that's
giving
good.
away the rings to keep the fingers. That's one,
Yeah,
right? What
that's
else?
really
Yeah.
good, right? Another one is that like in Brazil, not even the past is certain. So we say that when we're about to make predictions about the future, but like not even the past is certain. So
That's a good one.
it's very hard
That
to
is a good
predict.
one.
This is Victor. This is one I heard from Wanderlei Silva. I don't know if it's real or if he just did it to scare somebody.
Sorry.
But he said, he said we have a saying in Brazil: you show respect and you keep your teeth.
Maybe this is a rough man kind of speech. Since I'm only around polite society, my speeches are about like top hats and pipes,
Right.
not about knocking other people's teeth off.
Yeah. So I was burnt. How many Brazil dollar bills does it take to light to make a room warm?
Well,
fine,
now
yeah.
that the dollar has been so valued against our currency, no one can afford to light cigars with dollar bills anymore.
Oh no, even the
So we have to use our own currency and the lowest
Oh, no.
denomination of that. Otherwise,
What is the
it's
Brazilian currency? I just realized I don't.
real? So it's
Oh right,
real.
right, real.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, by the way, someone asked about someone who always has Carnation Revolution in their username. Let me get this. But you're actually, and he asks about it all the time. In fact, I really owe him a show on this because also not enough people talk about it. Booty.
Bodie.
Rude.
I was like, did anyone fart on the live stream? But no, it was just a dog. It's good.
Yeah. I think my parents are back and she probably hears them or something.
Alright.
Or smells them. I don't know if they're back, but that's my suspicion. Okay, so
Carnation Revolution, right? The
yes,
popular
someone
movement that toppled Salazarist fascist
in
regime in Portugal.
Portugal, yeah. So Katie, don't forget to ask him about the Carnation Revolution of Portugal 1974 as a template for solution to all our earthly troubles. Now, I wouldn't necessarily ask you that, but because you are from Brazil and that is your, the colonizer country of Brazil, yes, I'll ask you.
I don't know.
What-
I feel like
what do you know?
I'm being put on the spot. Like, is there any
Yeah.
money? Like, if I
Yeah, I
answer
know,
correctly?
seriously.
I don't know. I
Embarrassing
don't
you?
know that well.
Not
I
all
know
Portuguese
that,
language speakers. Yeah.
yeah, but it was. I mean, I have the like top line, paragraph 1 of high school history textbook. If you're interested in that.
Yeah,
But it
sure.
was during the far right Salazarist regime in Portugal, a military dictatorship as well. He was a general or a marshal or whatever, but someone correct me on that because I haven't brushed up on my Portuguese history lately.
Maybe Carnation.
But the whole raison d'etre of the Portuguese state was its colonies, right? They thought of themselves as an empire. And they had all these colonies around the world, particularly in Africa, Angola, Mozambique, in particular, being the most important ones. Cape Verde as well, but that one with a different history. But as Africa decolonized and Portuguese lost these decolonization wars, it became very hard for the Salazarist regime to have a reason for existing, right? Like how if your whole thing is how you're a glorious empire, then your empire is gone. So it kind of like fell from within. It was like in crumbles economically, and the Carnation Revolution was because the low levels in the army, so like not the generals and these assholes that sit behind the desks, but the foot soldiers and not the officials, kind of turned on the government and did a somewhat peaceful revolution that toppled it. But I think I'm uncomfortable saying that it was peaceful because in the process of it, like there was a lot of very bloody wars in Africa. And we tend to call things like peaceful when the bloodshed happened elsewhere.
Right.
So it wasn't that peaceful because, wars were fought, even though not directly
Like the
related
Cold War
to
wasn't cold
yeah.
for Soviet, for like,
Yeah, exactly. So
Russia or the United States, but for its
but yeah,
satellites.
exactly. But I mean, this is the top line thing. Maybe I can study up my Portuguese history.
Yeah.
Or maybe find someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. It'd be like if I just asked a Mexican guest about Spanish history, but you guys are it's not quite as problematic with Portuguese and Brazilian, I think. Although, I don't know, Victor is frozen. Maybe that's his way of checking me. Yeah.
Hey, am I here? You kind of flashed away.
Yeah.
And okay.
Okay.
I didn't hear what you said, but yes, I agree with you.
You agree. Okay, yeah. Well, thank you so much. And where can people find you online and the projects you're working on?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Pougy. So VPOUGY. You can also watch System Update, Glenn Greenwald's show on YouTube. You can find it on his Substack. I produce that and edit that as well. And if you find me on Twitter, you'll be able to see whatever I'm working on.
Great. Thank you so much, Victor.
Yeah, always a pleasure talking to you. Nice actually meeting you, Leslie, although I have a parasocial relationship with you already from the podcast.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Great to meet you too, Victor.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Yeah. Bye, guys.
Bye. That was great, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely amazing info. Great interview, Katie.
Yeah. I kept thinking, because of his black mic in the center, it made it look like he was wearing overalls. Like, what's it called? Like Oshkosh?
Oshkosh, Begod.
Yeah. Anyway, well, guys, we have our next guest. So excited to be talking to him. If there are any super chats that were missed, maybe, let's see. I think they were highlighted, but you know what, you know what to do, because we forgot to kind of set up a super chat reader. So you know what to do. You just say it again, and we go on the honor system, right? So what else? I think we're gonna. Should we just? Let me just exit out of here. Let me make sure I didn't lose any. I mean, sorry. It's harder to do this show when you have a dog on your lap, but I don't regret it. I don't regret it at all. Okay, so we're going to bring in our next guest, and again, let's give Victor a round of snaps. That was really great. And we're going to bring in our next guest, and he is someone who has been on the show before. He is a correspondent at the Black Agenda Report, and he is none other than Danny Haiphong. Hi, Danny. How are you?
Hey, everyone. Hey, Leslie. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
Yeah. Hi, Katie.
Hi. Thanks for joining us.
For sure.
So you have some really great pieces up at Black Agenda Report, and you're also someone who is pretty fearless in talking and writing about China. And I wanted to I thought you'd be a perfect person to talk about what's happening right now, because we've seen this like combination of obviously the shooting in Atlanta, which a lot of people are condemning, and yet at the same time you see some of the same people who are condemning that anti-Asian racism. They don't seem to have a problem with the other anti-Asian racism that's being launched abroad. And also, I saw on Twitter you had some really interesting points about how you experienced racism growing up. And so just wanted to basically have you on to, have a conversation about this.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, this
Of
is
course.
such an important topic because everyone is talking about it right now, but I feel like there's so much context that is left out intentionally in order to hide the fact. I know the Biden administration has condemned the attack, condemned anti-Asian racism, not ascribing anti-Asian racism to the perpetrator of the crime in Atlanta. Neither is the mayor of Atlanta, neither is the police chief. But for me, I think what's really important to understand with what is going on, because what happened in Atlanta has happened thousands upon thousands of times in the last several months, is the fact that it is U.S. imperial policy that has created this situation, that laid the foundations for anti Asian racism. But then we have to connect that historical context to the fact that for the last year, especially, but arguably for the last decade, the United States has been treating China as the next boogeyman, right? This is part of the new Cold War that includes Russia as well. But China has become such a principal target of the US military and economic apparatus and the
Well,
ruling
Danny,
elite
to be
generally.
fair, not to cut you off, to be fair, but also we sometimes target North Korea as well.
Hmm.
Just to be clear,
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
so obviously there's no race element there
Right.
going on.
Right. There is this universal affliction
Exactly.
that the US has, right? I mean, to be honest, I mean, white racism and white supremacy, there is no logic to it. It's all about dehumanization. And that's why people like the perpetrator in Atlanta can't tell one Asian American
Right.
versus the other. But the point really is, to me, is that all of the aggression that the United States wages abroad, DPRK, North Korea involved because the United States is still technically at war with Korea. There was no
Right.
peace treaty signed. There's still tens of thousands of troops lined up along the DMZ in South Korea, ready to engage in war. The United States has hundreds of military bases in the Asia Pacific. And in my article, I talk about both my own personal experiences as a Vietnamese person growing up and how the language of racism, the experience of racism was very pertinent in my life, but the fact that there is a context to this. The US immediately occupied the Philippines after it defeated Spain in the so called Spanish American War, killed millions of people, over a million people, over a nearly 5 decade long occupation. And this is where a lot of the racist language actually stems from. A lot of the racist terms we hear stems from events like this, as well as the fact that in the United States, all of the migrants from China, migrant laborers that were coming over in the mid to late 19th century, were being targeted violently by the US government, by even labor organizations in the state of California, for example, in order to try to exclude them because they were seen as low wage laborers who were undermining the so called pure civilization of the United States. But as that was happening, the reason why there were laborers coming was the very predictable and very regular phenomenon of the United States was engaging in the Opium Wars, had engaged in the Opium Wars with what is the United Kingdom, was then the British Empire, and caused the displacement of millions of Chinese, the deaths as well of hundreds of thousands during the Opium Wars. And that caused the Century of Humiliation, which China still remembers very well. So these events, the targeting of Asian Americans that is happening right now, they're often dehistoricized. They're often taken out of context, and this allows the U.S. imperial machine to keep rolling on, and it allows the very foundations for this kind of racism to continue, and also negates really principal issues like the fact that although a lot of Asian Americans are considered model minority in terms of their status in the United States, many of them, including New York City, where a quarter of all Asian American identified people live in poverty, the highest rate in the city, these issues become lost in the sauce almost. You don't
Right.
hear about them.
Well, can you read some of your piece? Just the opening I thought was really interesting. Do you mind doing that? Or
Oh, sure. I should
let's
open it up.
see. Yeah. Well, we have it here. I can also, but you can, if you open up it, you can read at your pace. Then
Sure.
you'll see why I'm kind of loath to read it myself.
I understand. Let me
I'll
open it
oops,
up.
that's not what I meant.
Here we are. Okay.
But I can have.
So, all right. So I'll read it. So, give me that ball, Gook. Can you see with those eyes, Chink? Did your dad get your mom in Vietnam? These were just a few of the references to anti-Asian racism heard frequently throughout my childhood, which were often accompanied by social humiliation and threats of violence, whether in the form of robbery, many times, or a puzzling curiosity about the size of my genitals. More politically correct adults would throw praise at my perceived model minority status. This sent an early message that the best means of surviving within a racist society was to focus on individual uplift and avoid conflict with those in power.
Yeah. And then you go through some really interesting hate crimes statistics. And what do you think though is missing from this conversation? I mean, it seems like we're seeing a lot of what we always see post-Trump, which is like, oh, this wasn't a problem before, or this is just a problem of people checking their white privilege, learning more about cultures, and working on their sensitivity.
Yeah, there's so much missing, right?
Yeah.
It's the historical context I talk about in the article, but I think what's really important right now is that over the last year, and it's not just Donald Trump, this is a bipartisan consensus, there has been an extremely aggressive posture taken by the United States toward China, so aggressive that the corporate media cannot stop with their anti-China headlines. I think just yesterday,
yeah.
the New York Times published an article about
that
how
was
China
surprising.
was using hamster ovary cells, right, to produce their vaccines. This was framed as if this was some kind of out of the ordinary phenomenon, but actually this stems back from the 40s.
Stem
Yeah.
cell. Sorry, I couldn't help you.
Exactly. It stems back from the 40s in a Boston lab, and it's been used widely around the world. So there is this yellow peril, new Cold War rhetoric. Every headline, every image from the Financial Times to Foreign Policy magazine, every image is a dragon. It harkens back to the United States being attacked by China, right? That was the image that was really conjured up in the late 19th century, mid to late 19th century, to justify the attacks on Chinese migrant laborers and Japanese migrant laborers too later on, and Korean migrant laborers. Also, it justifies the immense aggression that's happening right now. I mean, all of these narratives from the Adrian Zenzes of the world who have all of this baggage, talking about genocide, talking about human rights, talking about all this. It's all about painting China as this new boogeyman in order for the United States to enforce and expand its dominance around the world. And the reason why we don't hear about the historical context is because the present situation must look new, right? That's how liberals, honestly, the liberal class, the ruling class on the liberal section, that's how they get away with these kind of crimes, by acting like Donald Trump and his China virus is somehow out of the ordinary. But when Warren Delano was selling opium and in China, making his fortune, the grandfather of FDR, it's highly likely that he and his class were part of the creation of this yellow peril racism with their brothers in struggle, the British Empire and the rest of the Western powers. That's how racism works. But we don't hear about that because that talk speaks of the function of race, which is to ensure domination of an empire, of a capitalist power. It's also to ensure that workers here cannot unite, that they are constantly thinking about, and this happened a lot. It still happens today, but it happened a lot during the initial flux of Chinese laborers into the United States. Organized labor was more concerned with excluding Chinese laborers than they were with organizing with them, right? Like that was one of the huge issues that really peppered and shaped that moment in history. It built the railroads, and it also decimated the labor movement in many ways up until the Great Depression. So, I think the dual analysis of understanding the history of the United States in the Asia Pacific, from its genocide and occupation of the Philippines to its destruction of Korea from 50 to 53, killing millions of people, Vietnam over 10 years, killing millions of people, Laos, Cambodia. I mean, we can go down the line. Racism really served to justify all of that. And as I said on Twitter, the chickens of imperialism always come home to roost. So even if Asian Americans, to some degree, have had a varied experience with exploitation, racism in the United States, there really is no protection from the principal issue at heart, which is the fact that the racism toward Asian Americans is really an outgrowth of what really this empire requires. It requires this ideology in order to expand and in order to get away with its crimes. And Joe Biden right now is doing the same thing, going around talking about genocide and talking about how China needs to be contained and
I like
repeating
that
the same things.
Keep going.
Oh, no,
No,
keep going.
Sorry.
No, just doing the same things that Donald Trump was doing, except with a minor shift in tone. You'll never hear Joe Biden say China virus because that's against the science, but you'll always hear Joe Biden talk about how China is the principal rival of the United States. It must be contained. We need to send warships out there. We need to sanction Huawei, the big corporation producing a lot of the 5G technology out there now. Like, this is the terrain of the new Cold War. The media is implicated, and it's just so interesting to see how the corporate media pontificates about why anti-Asian racism exists, while at the same time it stokes fear in the population of China, which then stokes fear into the population about all Asian Americans, about the coming erasure of what quote unquote America is really all about. That picture of China taking over and destroying American values, all of this American exceptionalist nonsense is really at the heart of empire building and at the heart of why there is so much anxiety right now about Asian Americans in the United States. People say, oh, it's COVID-19. Yeah, COVID-19 was an inflection point. Surely it was an inflection point because China was blamed for the virus from the very get-go. The Washington Post did it. Everyone did it, right? China, there was a lab, all of this conspiracy theory nonsense. But what ended up happening was that fear ended up becoming such a proxy to push people into supporting all of the aggressive policies under Trump and all of the aggressive policies that are continuing under Biden.
And Liz, I mean, I was actually, you sent me, Danny, you sent me this graphic, right? With all these foreign policy economists. Was that you who sent it to me? All these magazine images. What was the context for that? Was that a New York Times article about it?
No, that was, I think, Ian Goodrum of China Daily and People's World. I think he put that together in a separate tweet, and then someone put it in one image.
I see. Okay,
and they've been sharing it around. Yeah, they've been sharing it around.
So what should I put in that? Because I want to show it to people, but also I need to do that. I'm going to tweet it out. So what should I say about this? Actually, this is how I can share it. All right, 1 second. Because I couldn't think of an easy way to share it because it's not uploaded, plus whatever. All right, so here we're going to do a group tweet. We haven't done one of these in a while. Right, Leslie? Okay, so here's the image. See what it says? Can everyone see it? Let's see, how would we... Actually, let me go back to that. There's the image. Can people see it?
Yeah.
Kind of. So what...
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, and what does it say? It says, the New York Times, how much does a mirror cost? Right, because this is an article about the New York Times about anti-Asian racism, right? That's the joke. I'm really doing a great job explaining it.
Yeah, I think the article at the top is the New York Times. Why is anti-Asian racism happening?
Right.
And all of the articles show all of the
right. Sorry, I don't know.
The Yeah.
Right. It's what? Why has there been a spike of anti-Asian hate? Okay. And then how much does a mirror cost? Okay, there it is. Right. So what? I mean, I'll just tweet this out and say we're talking about this now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Live
Yeah,
tweet.
it's
Sorry. You know what's?
it's
Yeah. Keep
incredible.
going.
No, it's just incredible because I've noticed this ever since COVID-19 began. When Wuhan was responding, the lockdown, there was an immediate, almost onslaught almost every day of articles talking about the horrors in China and around something that became a pandemic, and then it affected everyone globally. And we already started out, and I know Max Blumenthal and others have talked about this as well. We already started out from this point of we can't hear about what are the best ways to respond to the pandemic because everything China is doing is off the table. That's how really it started in the United States. Nothing China did, from its lockdown, from its sending tens of thousands of doctors to Wuhan, from building 2 hospitals in a matter of weeks. None of that could be done here, mostly because the economic system doesn't allow it. But
Right.
the propaganda about China also disallowed people from even thinking about demanding this kind of thing. I think
Right.
that is what is so incredible about. I mean, that image. The
Yeah.
Economist is such
Yeah.
a
We should go through some of
right-wing
those, right?
publication. Yeah, and that image of the flag of China as a mask over the world is just, I mean, it just sends such a clear message of yellow peril and
Which one is this? This
reinforces the new
is
Cold War.
which one? I'm trying to. I don't know why you can't. Where is this? Let's see. Is it in here?
Yeah, it's in the I don't know if you could say second middle row next to the Mona Lisa, which is
Right.
also another one about
Oh
Europe.
yeah. Right. Okay. So this one we're talking about.
Yeah.
How bad will it get?
So
Yeah.
so everything, I mean, every article that you see, all these headlines, and it's almost every day in the corporate media, and all of it is about fear of China. Be afraid of China. Everything that China is doing, which most of it in the corporate media is not well sourced. It's not an investigation. It's just headlines built with innuendo and claims to spread fear. And we're seeing the fruits of it. I don't think that we can there's just no way of disconnecting this new Cold War on China with this anti-Asian racism. And Leslie, you bring up a really good point about how it really does reflect on all of the ways in which any adversary, especially from this region that the United States has a very similar profile in how it's framed and portrayed. Even Vietnam, which has had somewhat cooler relations with the United States in recent years, even talking about its successful pandemic response, little words like authoritarianism and things like that get thrown in order to show readers that you should, in fact, despise this country as well. So I think this is a huge, I think it's part of the layers of all of this, right? Because there's the history, and then there's the racism that goes along with that history. There's the empire building and the anti-communism. There's so many layers to it, but it gets lost in this "Stop Asian Hate." Like, I really dislike that slogan because it doesn't at all get to it's not hate. Nothing about racism is about hate. Hate is a feeling that comes out of political interests and economic interests that are either being challenged or are being asserted.
Yeah. I'm just looking at some interesting questions and was also going to show you guys a video, which I thought was really weird, from Chris Cuomo. But I just want to, because I can't pull off how to, I can't really pull off how to see this in a big enough font on there. But just so people know, some of the Financial Times headlines: an assertive China challenges the West with a claw, like literally like a rooster claw, it looks like. I wish I could show this in a bit. I'll put it in after but everyone can see it on the Twitter, right? China is taking its ideological fight abroad, and there's a dragon. I mean, these are unbelievable. Here, can someone put them up on the screen? I'll read them from here, but I'll do that. Here. Stop screen. Okay, but then share. I think it's important to see the visuals of this. Okay. All right, is this the biggest I can make it? All right. Oh, wait, can I do this? Ah! Oh my God, I hate
zoom
that.
your screen.
Oh my God, why does it always do that? How do I make it so it doesn't open? Jesus, I hate that. Oh my God. All right, finally. But look, I'm gonna try to make it bigger. Oh, okay, now I can. So does everyone see it now? Yes, okay, phew.
Yeah.
All right. Oh no, I'm not sharing the right screen. Sorry, this is so much fun. This part, I love it. Hold on. Okay. Okay, here it is. All right, we'll cut out the other stuff. Can everyone see it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I see it. So like a dragon hand.
Yeah, like what the hell? So it's an assertive China challenges the West. Dragon hand, right? China is taking its ideological fight abroad. Dragon. This is not dystopian fiction. This is China. Why Europe will lose the U.S. over China. And then what's that? Another claw with a bone?
Yep. Giving a bone
dog?
to Europe. Yep.
Why? I mean, I like dogs, so whatever. But that's kind of problematic, I would think. China, not America, will decide the fate of the planet. All right. Well, a little less nervous. Just kidding. Buying up the world. The coming wave of Chinese takeovers. And it has an image of Mao in a window handing out money through the window. Then China's designs on Europe, and it has a Mona Lisa, but instead of wearing whatever Mona Lisa wears, she's wearing what is that, like a Mao-ish?
Yeah, it's like an old uniform.
Uniform with the
from
Chinese
the,
flag.
Revolutionary days. Yeah.
Yes. How bad will it get? And then it's a picture of the globe with a helmet, like turned into a helmet.
That's a
mask.
That's a mask.
I'm such an idiot. I was like, I thought that this part. Okay, I thought this was like a helmet on a red face, but no, this makes a lot more sense. This is a great metaphor. Like China should pay them for this.
Yeah.
Because they're helping vaccinate people, right? Like that's a good thing to have a mask from a country.
I'm sure that was written sometime in February when no one else supposedly was experiencing. I think many other countries are experiencing it, but I think
it hadn't been picked up. Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't know that. Yeah. Right.
Say, Wuhan. Yeah.
China's long arm reaches into American campuses.
Oh, come on.
China wants to reshape the global order. That's an Axios. Can American values survive in a Chinese world?
Hopefully not.
I know. Most of these are foreign policy, but that was an Axios one. And then this is a Washington Post one. Opinion. China's dangerous Taiwan temptation. And it has a dragon again. Like, can't you, like, rotate some of this? Oh, so these were Financial Times and The Economist. And then what's this one? Let's see if we can move
There's only a few New York Times in there, I think. But
China's political power grows with its capital markets. What's that? Is that supposed to be free? Oh, sorry. No, that makes sense. The Chinese threat to American speech. And it has a quote bubble that's being covered up by a Chinese flag. Some more, definitely need some more dragon imagery. China's extraterrestrial threat. China exploits U.S. investment to conquer media. What's more? Dragons. How China gets American companies to parrot its propaganda. And then that is nice. That has a... Oh, wow, that's really interesting. So what is that? That's a boxing glove that has the Chinese stars on it, and it looks like it's smashing what? Buildings?
Yeah, looks like corporate offices.
That's great. Again, do they realize what they're doing? Like, they're just, owning themselves, kind of.
Yep.
Yeah, so there's that. Okay, I'm glad we finally got that under control. Leslie, I'm curious what you think as someone who lived in Japan, how you've seen, I don't know, if this is something that you've seen reflected in other parts of the world, if you've seen these like stereotypes.
Oh yeah, there's actually lots of anti-Chinese sentiment in Japan. Actually, I've talked to some friends about the pandemic, and they sometimes sound like the media. It certainly sounds like the American media about blaming China, punishing China for this. So you see that in Japan too.
Yeah. And then,
For
of course,
sure.
there's like xenophobia. That refers to China and Japan, or just
It's just China, I think.
China? Okay.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to, let's see, I wanted to actually, does anyone have any questions for Danny? I wanted to actually show something that I thought was really kind of weird about the coverage of the shooting. Oh, we should talk about Alexei McCammon being fired. You see, she's leaving the New York the Teen Vogue. Did you guys see that?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Any
just
thoughts
saw.
on that?
I didn't get the details of it, but I saw that it was from some comment she made in 2011 or something.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Leslie, canceled or uncanceled? What do we think? I have my own take on this. I think she should definitely been canceled, but not necessarily for this. But Leslie, what do you have a take on this yet, or am I springing this on you? If so,
You are
or
springing
springing
it.
it. I really thought this is so your lane, though. But I guess you're not a big Teen Vogue
I'm not.
consumer.
I'm not.
What
in
did
the
she say? I mean, what
Something
did she
about
say?
being outdone by an
think-
Asian again. Oh.
I like it. Will
am I
like so. She was in college. Like it was all the goofy stuff that people would say around 2013. People have been talking about this a lot. Like up to say 2015, people. It was just a thing where you would make nasty jokes about Asian people, just like you would do it about trans people until what 2016. You know, like it was a thing, and that was kind of, and that was some of. It was in that realm, right, of just being like a shitty, young shitty person saying young shitty thing, like when white kids get busted saying the N word or something like that.
Yeah.
It's basically the same thing, and the question is like, she was in college. It was a decade ago. It does this mean that she shouldn't be in this position? I think I don't have a problem with her not getting the position or the job, especially in charge. Especially, like 10 years is, I don't know, 10 years is long enough where like I can understand you being forgiven for something, but 10 years doesn't seem like long enough to be like editor in chief of a magazine. That's kind of the thing I'm thinking about. Like you, I don't know if she has the maturity. I don't know. I don't know this person. Again, Katie, you're getting me on a hot. You give me on a hot mic.
Hot mic cancellation.
Hot mic,
Yeah,
but I don't know.
This is how Leslie in his natural habitat before it's been like chewed and digested and regurgitated.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
refined.
I know. I gotta formulate this, but I would love to hear what Danny thinks.
Well, I'm interested in what is her commitments now. I mean, yeah 10 years ago, sure, that's terrible.
I'll tell you about her commitments in a second.
If she was a conscious adult, yeah, that's pretty bad. I mean, if you're a conscious adult living in the world and publicly saying these kind of things,
it was like
not good. For sure.
No, not good. But it was like I've been outdone by an Asian again, I think, or something. It was like the model minority trope.
Right.
Yeah, and she was mad at her Asian TA, but she just mentioned that the TA was Asian. She didn't say anything explicitly, but she made a point to mention that her annoying TA was Asian.
Yeah.
Well, she also was dating Biden's press secretary, T.J. Ducklo, whatever his name is. And he, of course, threatened a reporter and said that she was jealous of. So this woman who's stepped down from Vogue was, and I actually talked about this on The Hill, and I think it's a kind of important point, which is that a lot of times these things, which are, they're not good that she said those things, but they kind of obscure other power dynamics and problems and structural things. So, like, she was on the Biden-Harris beat while her boyfriend was working for Biden as his press secretary. And then when someone at Politico started covering the story, he threatened the female journalist, not the male journalist. He threatened the female journalist and told her that she was just jealous and said he would destroy her. This was Biden's press secretary. Can you imagine if a Trump person had done this? I wouldn't have to be like TJ Ducklo. Everyone would know his name.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yep.
I just Googled this guy, and one look at him, I know this Alexa person is like a fucked up person still and is lying
Yeah.
about their change. Just one look at who her boyfriend is. I'm
Let's
like,
see, can we
there's
share?
no
Can you do a screen
way
share?
that this person is a good person. I can like, there's just no
Right.
way that these are good people. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to make a snap judgment like that.
Well,
like,
and you know what? No, keep going. This is what you
But-
no. This is one of your talents.
Well,
You
in
got
these
to-
institutions, there are very few good people.
Right.
Good
I
people,
mean, that's
exactly,
just-
and
yeah.
they look, and they just look like
That's-
people made in a lab to like work in a think tank, go back
Yeah.
and forth between government and lobbying and think tanks. All right, so I have the screen share up,
Okay.
Katie, if you want to add it in.
Where is it? Is it the Leslie Lee? This one?
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah, I
there we
mean,
go.
Come on.
Oh, God.
come on. I mean, they're lovely looking
He looks like
people,
the young
but
Adrian Dents. He looks
Yeah,
like the young
but-
Adrian Dents.
Yeah. What is his
But
name again?
these are
TJ
not people to
Ducklow.
trust. These are not people I trust. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They
That's
look
what
like
I'm saying.
they are.
That should have been
They
the
were
issue,
born with
not-
lanyards.
Born
I'm
with
sorry. So
lanyards.
yes, she is canceled.
They came out.
I'm-
They came out with lanyards around their necks. That's not
Yeah.
the umbilical cord. That's another thing. Yeah.
I mean, come on. Not
Yeah,
to judge a book by its
totally.
cover, but like
Come
you
on.
can just
You can see
And,
the
you know-
mask even. Oh God.
yeah, because like she's working at Axios while he's the
Press
Biden's
secretary.
press secretary,
Yeah,
and they're
who
doing
then harasses
ads
it.
and they're doing interviews and people to try to be like the new
yeah.
James Carville and
Well,
whatever
Mary,
her
again, Mary Madeline.
yeah, whatever her name is. Yeah. So no, I'm
And then
definitely
you know what
calling
they
it a
did
cancellation on them.
when it was okay. So we're canceling her for totally different reasons, right? He should be canceled forever from everything. And then you know what
Yes.
they did? They had her removed from. She only covered Biden, only covered Harris, not Biden,
Biden,
because
well,
their
yeah,
relationship.
of course.
So okay, I think that they're on the same
Awesome.
team, Biden Harris. So if
Yeah,
you
yeah, I
have a
think
conflict of
that's a-
interest covering Biden, it may extend to his vice president, who we know is
Well-
basically trying to run the show or whatever. Anyway.
What's interesting about cancel culture for me in this whole debate about cancel culture is that a lot of it happens within these mechanisms, these institutional arrangements, very like the organs of class power. Really, that's where a
Right.
lot of the canceling is happening. And so the forces that are canceling are, in part, our enemies, and the forces that are being canceled are also our enemies. So it's hard for me. I often
Right.
am like, okay, if they get canceled, I don't really care. I don't care if Tom Cotton gets canceled. Like that's not
Yeah.
my. I think the
Right.
guy is a reactionary, and he is part of the worst excesses of this system. But at the same time,
I don't know
the
if he
forces
got
that are
canceled. Yeah. I
I
think
think
the
it's
idea
like-
is that the publisher
right,
got
the
canceled
editor,
for
yeah,
him.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I think
the
it's
editor
I mean
got
that's
canceled.
another thing is the issue though is like it doesn't we don't have a real clear cut. It's like thrown around so much, kind of like identity politics, which can mean
Yeah.
the weaponization of identity politics. It can mean
Yes.
actual identity politics. You know, so
Right.
that's and you know there is something, and I have to admit I get kind of frustrated with the like, but this person has money, this person's powerful. It's like I was actually saying today with a friend over like G-Chat. I was like, when I stop talking about Palestinian writers being canceled or Palestinian people being canceled and only talk about like David Shore's tweet, like that's when you can like have an intervention. But I
Right.
do think sometimes it's easy to be like, well, who cares about that person? But and again, the Tom Cotton thing, I don't know. And it's such a hard conversation to have without like, what are we talking about? We're talking about because there is something about like there's a groupthink thing where
Right.
certain things
Yeah.
they're I don't know they're very
It's nuanced. It's like
Yeah.
for me, like I would never advocate for Silicon Valley to suppress Trump's
Right.
Twitter account.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of in that similar range. While at the same time, a lot of the forces that are decrying cancel culture are often
Oh, of course.
to the right. So it's
Barry Weiss
so-
couldn't care less and tried to get a
Exactly.
Palestinian professor fired. I mean, yeah, for sure, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
definitely
it's nuanced, and I think for me, with someone like the woman that we're talking about right now, it's hard for me to feel bad about what she did because she is operating on these lines to
Right.
funnel everyone into the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
and
that's what she should be canceled.
basically-
I mean,
yeah,
that's what Teen Vogue should almost be canceled for, not canceling her for the right reasons. I thought they do a lot of good work.
I know. I'm surprised they had someone like her.
I know. I know. That's
I didn't
the
know.
problem.
I didn't
know. So this is. I wanted to share this. It's kind of weird, but it's like. I thought this was a weird coverage of because Leslie, actually, I saw you tweeting some hot takes on the shooting. which was that you can't determine. Oh, what?
Yeah.
I'm not attacking
Just
you.
because like so many people were kind of jumping in with, and like first of all, like I feel like with any of these shootings, like there's going to be another one, and the next one might be something like there was a black, like we don't talk about it a lot. And I'm actually shocked that the right doesn't talk about the fact that during the Black Lives Matter protests, someone shot 7 or 8 police officers. A mass shooter shot 7 or 8 police officers, and they'll make hay of it. I thought they would, but it's
I
like
know. Why didn't they? Do you think they were afraid to turn into a copycat thing
because
by
of
covering
the
it?
because of the well, that's part of it. Like, so the media is so complicated, right? Because you want to talk about, because first of all, I do want to say, like, I have no problem with people using this as an opportunity to talk about anti Asian racism, because there's been such a huge spike in them. Besides this, it shouldn't take this shooting, this shooting to like be talking about this, because that's a real like problem affecting hundreds, thousands of people every time they walk out their house. But we only focus on the big, bombastic story about this absolutely horrific thing that happened. It's absolutely horrific, but the way we like the first problem is like when you start talking about
Sorry,
these
there's a
shootings.
bug flying around.
Yeah.
Growling. Sorry.
Yeah. So what people studying have found out is like the more you talk about things like the specific motive, if you read a manifesto, if you talk about the killer's name, which a lot of people want to do, it's like that actually increases the likelihood of the next person to do something. So it's like a complicated, it's a really complicated issue. Thinking about like what the reasons behind this are, which is a very different thing than the cause behind it. People confuse like the individual person's motive, which is like incredibly complex. Obviously, racial element to it. Obviously, a misogynistic element to it. And with these types of killers, there's more stuff going on. Like they were probably. I mean, this is not to bring sympathy. This is just what happens. It's like. If you're like when you're talking about spree killers, assassins, serial killers, it's never one thing. It's a very complex failure of all of society, more or less. But I have no problem with people using this opportunity to talk about like the bigger issue of Asian American violence. But I do want to I generally was just trying to caution people from getting too involved into into the first few hours of what we hear, because first of all, everything we hear is coming from cops. Like every single thing we learn is coming from cops, and we have no choice. We have to take their word on it. We don't necessarily know all the things that go into like what's happening, what's going on. The things we learn in the first days, the first hours usually turn out to be not the case, or not true, or to be exaggeration. And really the main thing is like every time, whatever we decide is the reason, the problem for this incident, this shooting, specifically shootings, we tend to just forget about anyway. We name it, shame it, and then we forget about it. When there was a misogynistic shooting by Elliot Rodgers, right? There was a big fight about this is sexism, this is about sexism, and then people were saying, no, it's not about sexism, we don't know, and everybody was getting in a big fight, and then it finally came out, all right, we decided it was sexism, and then we didn't, like, there was no talk about it after that. I think people get caught up in trying to talk about, like, it doesn't matter really what the reasoning this guy did it is, what his specific motive is, because he exists within a racist society anyway, right? So like when you're getting involved in the minutia of what this particular person does, and like there's also like he's talking about, it might be like religious mania. That doesn't mean that racism isn't a part of it, but that's also a thing. And this is just like a very disturbed person who did something absolutely awful, and like we cannot, there's self-reported reasonings for why they did this, or whatever we determine, like, is not anything we can really use to combat these larger issues. Yeah. But we can use them to talk about the larger. I just didn't want people to get caught up in the minutia of he did this for this reason. No, he did this for this reason, because then you can expend all your energy focusing on that without, and we really don't have a lot of that information yet. We're just guessing when I think the bigger focus should be on those larger issues of racism and violence against Asian Americans, and not just this awful incident. Because at the end of the day, like, this guy is in jail right now, right? But all the other people aren't, like all the other people, and like we have to deal with that, and that's like the bigger issue. So I would just caution people not to get caught up in the minutia of this particular case, because I mean that's what true crime is for, like this is what people do true crime podcasts and stuff for. It's not like the larger political issue is just bigger than this particular guy.
Well, I want to jump in because I think you're making a really important point. For me, I approached it the way I did by talking about first my own personal experience, because this is something that anyone who grows up Asian American, regardless of nationality, deals with that to some extent. But then we have to bring it to the larger issues, as you say. I brought it to the new Cold War in China happening right now, because to me, including, and definitely want to thank you in regards to the DPRK, including all of these other cases, but the new Cold War on China is the principal strategy of U.S. imperialism right now. It's the principal enemy. That is where the U.S. is setting its sights. And if we don't bring it to that level, we get caught up in these hashtags. I mean, I saw some hashtags, Asians are human, right? Stop Asian hate. This does not, I mean, it doesn't do anything. Similar to the debate around cancel culture, similar to a lot of things, there is this kind of liberal cleanup crew that I talk about American exceptionalism is a lot about cleaning up the worst excesses, or at least the worst presentation of what the United States is all about, right? It's all about cleaning it up, so it's more you can package it.
Oh, I forgot to mention your book, which is excellent. Yeah.
Yes, and you can in the realm of public relations still portray the United States as having decency in these values, democracy, and freedom by responding like Joe Biden did, like a lot of forces did, in saying we need to condemn hate. But a lot of the solutions end up going this route that alienates a lot of other groups, for example. So calls by a lot of mainstream activists have been law enforcement. We need law enforcement. We need police to be doing a better job. That is a signal, I think, of confusion around the class politics of all of this, but also it's a signal that there is more attention on the establishment and what the establishment is supposed to do around this, when in fact the establishment is the reason this is happening. The system itself is the reason this is happening. The centuries of U.S. imperialism, the centuries of demonizing Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Filipino immigrants as gooks, John McCain in 2004. He'll never not hate the gooks, right? He'll never apologize.
He'll never not say that. Well, to be fair, Danny, it's only the ones who did it to him, which is why I reserve my ethnic slurs, and I would do this, I'm sure, as a senator. I only use them on the particular individuals who did it, which isn't problematic at all.
Right. So that's the issue here, is that if we keep it to the minutia, if we keep it to the events and let the emotion ride, the establishment takes it and makes it into a project of self-correction, right? Of this kind of self-reform, when in fact the United States right now is about to negotiate in Alaska and likely will announce very harsh, just as the media has been, just as my administration has, very harsh tone and policy toward China, building on the Tony Blinken's
that's what I was gonna say.
Confirmation of Pompeo's genocide narrative in Xinjiang, and Blinken's confirmation of the military policy that the U.S. is waging in Asia.
Didn't he also say he warned China not to try to get its way through threats or coercion? I'm like, what do you think you're doing right now in that warning? Tony.
So I mean, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with an administration and really the whole apparatus right now. It's the sigh of relief that was breathed after Trump was defeated. There is this recalibration, I think, of the elite, and all of the policies that Trump left on the table are being carried forward and escalated in a lot of ways everywhere, especially toward China.
Right.
Huawei was just labeled a threat to national security, right? I mean, this is really big stuff, but because we're focused on the minutia of the events, we can't provide the context that will help people mobilize, actually fight against the source of the problem, because the source of the problem, is not the individual who goes and commits violence. It's the system that is producing that individual to commit that kind of violence.
1 second, I have to grab something because I'm going to see if I can try to kill this bug that is scaring Bodhi. Leslie and Danny, can you guys keep going? I'm going to mute myself and take the headphones out. So, well, no, just, yeah, Leslie, Danny, talk for like 1 minute. I'll be back. Can you do that? What do you want to ask each other? Or you want to respond to any chats? You can do one of the two things.
Yeah,
I'm leaving your hands.
Let me see. We got. All right. Lots of people mad about China in the chat as usual. Like, sorry, if you want to talk smack, you gotta send the super chat. You gotta send the super chat if you want to talk smack about China. Those are the rules. That's what they tell. That's what our bosses down there told us. But Danny, where can people hear your stuff? Like it's been great talking to you. I think this is the first time I've heard you. We've been following each other. But where can people get your plugs in?
Yeah, so definitely most weeks, weekly generally, you can find me at blackagendareport.com. And I also have a YouTube channel that I manage with Margaret Kimberly of Black Agenda Report called The Left Lens. So definitely subscribe to that.
I love Margaret Kimberly. I had her on Struggle Session once. Her book Prejudicial is so great. Awesome. It's such an easy read too. Such an easy read, but very good.
It's incredible. Yeah, she's great. Great to work with. And then for all of my work, other things that I'm doing, as well as to just help support me, you can find me on patreon.com/Danny Haiphong. That's the way to support me individually, and you can find me on social media, Spirit of Ho in the name here, on Twitter. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well, so all just Danny Haiphong.
All right, cool. And that was a good question. Thank you for whoever highlighted it. But Danny, do you think that COVID-19 will continue to be used as anti-China propaganda as its negative effects continue to accrue?
For sure. It's so, it's mind-blowing, this issue of using COVID-19 to demonize China, given the fact that China has contained COVID-19 since April of last year. But yeah, recently we've already seen, right? CNN especially tends to release articles almost, quarterly about what was missing from reports in Wuhan, etc. Li Wanlian is often cited, even though he's a hero in China and was a part of the Communist Party, and everything, he was responded to, wasn't arrested. All of the narrative though is about how China hid things, right? So we're supposed to believe that the reason why a lot of other countries, especially the United States, with more than 500,000 deaths now, the reason why the United States wasn't able to respond was because China hid things. But the World Health Organization by January 11th already had a genome, already had information. It's pretty ridiculous. But yeah, this recently happened. I think in the last week or so, CNN published a report about how there's missing information in Wuhan, and that means that the virus wasn't responded to in time, and so that's insinuating the reason why so many other countries in the U.S. orbit did not succeed in containing the pandemic.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense at this point. Even if you wanted to say China screwed up in the beginning, it's all their fault initially, how many months, weeks even, do you think you get out of that? Like we knew at a certain point, right, what we were supposed to do, what we had to do. Or even I would even say if you do everything you're supposed to do, then guess what? Then you can make an argument that, all right, we're gonna send China a bill. All right, maybe this, but you didn't do everything you needed to do, right? You did not even close. Still not. It's just absolutely absurd to me. Biden just said, we're going to do whatever the hell we want on the 4th of July, no matter what. Like, how
Yeah,
can you blame China for that?
Independence Day,
Yeah.
Independence Day from COVID-19. Even if the vaccination guinea pig program, which is basically what the COVID-19 response is right now, it's get everyone vaccines and hope that that's what contains it in the end. That's not going to happen by July. I mean, there are going to be large sections of the population not vaccinated. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, what's funny about this is that China responded heavy-handeded to the local government in Wuhan.
And they were criticized for it. They were
yes,
there were articles
authoritarian.
criticized.
I think Foreign Policy magazine, which is always on the anti-China beat, and CNN, they were talking about authoritarianism, right? They deposed the local government so quickly. But that's how China responds to even the idea of a problem. I don't think actually there's a problem. I don't think there could have been a prediction about this virus being what it was, right? China had experience with SARS. The region as a whole has experiences with these things to some degree, but yeah, I think it was about an early detection system that they thought was faulty, and so immediately the central government said, okay, we need to replace the government in Wuhan. But that's not celebrated in the media. That's authoritarianism last year, and now China's successful containment, the corporate media doesn't even talk about it. Nor does Joe Biden or the no, we can't talk about how. Instead, they talk about how China is doing wrong by exporting its vaccines to global South nations who really need them, while the United States hoards hundreds of millions of doses of vaccines from not only people in the United States, but also people around the world. And we're supposed to believe that China is doing wrong. It's vaccine diplomacy and all of this by offering Africa and Latin America and Brazil, for example. Your last guest, Victor, was talking about Brazil. Brazil has been offered COVID-19 vaccines. Mexico, but China's the enemy for doing this, right? China is wrong to do this because they're not thinking about their own people. Well, we just found out that 64 million people in China have been vaccinated up until this point, and the pandemic. There are many days where there are 0 new cases, and when there are new cases, they don't spread because there is a mechanism to control it.
Yeah, like just you talked about mentioning building the hospitals like in a matter of weeks. I worked for the U.S. government for a while, and it took us years to rebuild a hospital after Katrina. Years. It's just amazing how much our country failed in this moment, and all we can do is like return to like racism. And as like the answer is like, well, China is still bad for starting this, but like they finished it too, and they showed us how to do it. Even if you want to blame them, right? Like there's certain, like, where's the personal responsibility? America loves to talk about personal individual responsibility. Don't believe in the collectivist action of the government coming down and saying we're going to lock it down, everybody's going to do this, and we're going to get rid of it. You don't believe in that. Well, this is what you get. You get a individual 250 odd million responses to COVID. We don't have a COVID response. Everybody has their own personal response to COVID that they're all doing separately. And that's why we're failing, and it's still a problem for us.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, it was funny. I always tell this story. I come back from China mid-January. I was there for 2.5 weeks. Come back, find out that there was a virus spreading at the time. I wasn't really I was around the country. I wasn't anywhere around Wuhan. I do have a friend who lives in Wuhan, though, and we were talking over social media, WeChat, while it was happening right after I got back. And he was telling me step by step what the local authorities, what the local branch of the Communist Party, what the massive numbers of volunteers, both in the Communist Party and outside of the Communist Party, that were mobilized. He's an older person too. He's in his 60s. And he was talking about how, even though it was so scary and there was this like threat looming, and they didn't know where it was going to go, just the fact that there was such attention to everyone's needs, right? The attention to, well, what do people need in a lockdown in order to be safe and in order to maintain it, right? What kind of technology needs to be deployed to track this thing so they can get it under control? All of that, I think, provided such a sense of safety. But I was listening to this almost in this sense of foreboding, where I was just like, well, anything in China is going to reach the United States. Anything anywhere is going to reach the United States. Globalization, and this is a world economy. So I was thinking in my head, wow, what is going to happen here when this starts to really jump off? Meanwhile, I have coworkers and people around me fearing for my safety. Thank God you're here, right? You're not over there dealing with COVID-19, or what the coronavirus as it was called then, asking me about bats, and right, it was already starting. So even before the coronavirus is blamed for the racism, right? But really, it was already there. It was already there, and it's the reason why we can't have nice things. I say it. I know Margaret says it a lot. Yeah, racism is why we can't have nice things. The wars that it fuels, they're the reasons we can't have nice things, because we can't learn from anywhere else in the world, right? Racism is, to me, one of the principal reasons why privatization exists. Why is there such a fragmented healthcare system? Why is the housing system the way it is? Well, racism helps justify all of the ways in which those areas of society become centers of profit rather than areas of human needs and a human right, which, I know we all agree on.
Yes. Amen to that. And I just wanted to show, there was a kind of weird thing I thought. I want your guys' opinion on it. I saw it on CNN with Chris Cuomo. Okay. Did I do the audio thing? 1 second. Shares. Okay.
CNN.
Can you hear that, guys?
That the suspect did feel tortured by a sex addiction and was in rehab last year. Investigators are still trying to pinpoint motive, as I keep repeating, because that's the key part of the analysis. But regardless, this has to put renewed focus on what has been happening in our country. Coalition Tracking Violence and Harassment Against Asian Americans reports nearly 3,800 racially motivated attacks against Asian Americans from last March to this one. Now, some of you hear this stat, you say, yeah, but it's not all white people who are attacking them. And so that makes it okay? Last time I checked, you don't really care who it is who's hurting you because of what or who you are. And that shouldn't be what's relevant here. Just in the last 2 months, Asian Americans reported being targeted at least 500 times. The rate of reporting is even higher among Asian women. President Biden condemned the attacks, and his spokeswoman was clear.
Okay, so there's that. Okay.
Was clear about this.
I think there's no question that some of the damaging rhetoric that we saw during the prior administration, blaming, calling COVID, the Wuhan virus or other things, led to, perceptions of the Asian American community that are inaccurate, unfair, have raised,
I don't think the problem is the accuracy,
has
actually.
elevated threats
I don't think that's the issue.
Asian Americans.
Inaccurate.
Yeah.
They come from China, that's all he means.
I can't
No,
take
actually, the entire
Fredo.
East
Oh my
coast
God.
of this country was infested with virus that came from Europe. Does he call it the Rome virus? Come on.
Always bring it back
Another
to
point
Italy.
of
Great
Yeah,
point, man.
always.
about what should be obvious. The U.S. government just declassified a threat assessment report for 2021 today on domestic violent extremism. We're going to delve into it later in the show. But one of the key takeaways is that violence on...
Okay, wait 1 second. God, I'm sorry to expose you guys to this much Cuomo, but we got
I
it.
might
I
need
couldn't
a-
find it in one clip.
One of the key takeaways is that violence on the home front, particularly motivations against minority populations, has been, quote, galvanized by recent political and societal events. So how do we counter this hate? St. Patty's Day, right? What did he do? He drove the snakes into the sea. How
Oh my
do we
God.
attack the snakes that are driving hatred in this country? What do we do? Let's take it to the better minds. Counter-terror analyst
Oh,
Phil
great.
Mudd, correspondent Amara Walker at one of the crime scenes. Good to have you both. Amara, let's start with you. What is the latest that we understand and the reaction of the community, specifically the Asian community there?
Well, Chris, I can tell you the fear is real. It is palpable. I'm afraid for my own family. I've spoken with countless people here in the Asian community in Atlanta. I've spoken with Asian people who work at spas and nail salons and restaurant owners, and they tell me that they bought.
Okay. One second. I wish this could be in one thing. Anyway, that could
spas
happen.
and nail salons and restaurant owners. That huge majority of them have been verbal harassed.
Okay. Hold on. This is
Traumatizing a
the
community.
part that I thought was interesting. Leslie, it kind of
It's
relates back
about
to what.
an affliction that he has.
Traumatized as a result of what's been happening since this pandemic began.
Quick follow. Does it make any difference within the community that the suspect says, no, it wasn't a hate crime. It's about an affliction that he has?
I'm glad you asked that, Chris, because experts that you speak with, academics, I can tell you Asian advocacy groups take issue with his statement because just because a crime may have been sexually motivated, it doesn't preclude the possibility that it may have been racially motivated. And look, I speak from experience as an Asian American woman. These things are deeply intertwined. Sex, sexism, and racism. You just look on the media, look in Hollywood, the perpetual stereotypes of hypersexualized women being seen as fetishes and sexual objects. And these stereotypes, experts will tell you, dehumanizes Asian women, and it also makes them unique.
Where's the one? All right. Basically, it went from him. This guy. This is the most annoying thing in the world.
Wouldn't be CNN if it wasn't annoying.
I
You
know.
go back years. I need to look at
Okay,
his Google search.
so here he is. He's being asked like what the deal is, right? Like how does he know what it was that caused this? Because this guy's a counterterrorism guy, so obviously he knows what he's talking
Asian
about.
women and
Hear this part of the analysis of something.
Okay, so let's hear.
to violence and racism, Chris.
He may not even understand his own motives, by the way, and it can be mixed motives. Very good points. Appreciate the reporting. Thank you. Stand by and, weigh in as you hear this part of the analysis. If something doesn't square with how you understand it, pop right in, okay, Amara? So, Phil, the idea of the simplicity of the analysis, he says that's not what it was. Is that the end of the analysis? And how do you anticipate and support within an investigation mixed motives?
Boy, it has been really frustrating today, Chris. I mean, we're just over 24 hours into the investigation, and I've seen people on TV saying, I understand what this is, and I believe that hate crime should be charged. So let's go into the investigation. Your first question is getting into the mind of somebody who might not even himself understand why he did this. I need his social media. I need his texts. I need his email. I need interviews with friends, family, former roommates. I need to go back to...
Hold on, it's getting there. This is basically the part.
to go back years. I need to look at his Google search history. And then I need to look at things that are aberrations. One friend says this, one friend says that. They don't square. How do I do a next interview tomorrow? To understand the motivation of somebody like this and to determine whether the motivation is clear, it's sexual, it's racist, takes a little while. We're not going to understand over time. I will tell you that if he is honest, if we have access to his social media, to his Google search history, to his text, and his email, to interviews with friends and family, and they are honest, we'll figure it out, but not within 26 hours, Chris. That's too fast.
I gotta tell you what bothers me about it, Phil. Give me your head on this. He can go a lot of places and encounter sex workers. Now, by the way, I don't mean to indict these businesses. Okay, I'm just going along with the suspicion of what he fed to the police. You know, these spas and massage players, aromatherapy, wherever he was going. He says, I have a sex addiction, so I had to go to these places.
Okay. So there's an interesting dynamic here where Cuomo clearly has a thesis. You can see him get upset actually at this guy.
I have a sex addiction, so I had to go to these places because I have to kill these women. He didn't have to go to these places. He didn't have to pick mostly Asian women. You know, he could have encountered sex workers in a lot of places. He could have killed lots of different kinds of people. He picked
That's
these,
such a
and it
weird
makes
thing
me
to say
wonder
live.
over time.
That's such
I
a weird thing
know.
to say.
Oh my god.
So
yeah,
this is
he
kind of
is-
what I was getting to earlier.
know.
So this segment
Yeah.
has nothing to do with politics. This is court TV. This
Nothing.
is trial TV. This is
Right.
talking about how they're gonna, do the case. That's what the guy on the left is talking about.
I know.
He's a cop. He's talking about how you would build the case. It has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to
course
do
not,
with
yeah.
getting to the root cause. It's like, how can we make a case so that we can put this guy in jail for as long as possible?
Right.
Because it's important. Like, people underestimate motive actually does really matter. We tend to not think about spree killings and mass murders and serial killers. When you take something like that, a case like that, to a jury is actually most jurors are like, wait a minute, why would someone do this?
Right.
They don't just assume that, oh, they're just some pervert. So the prosecutors want to establish a clear motive, and they want to establish a motive that doesn't allow the defense to say, oh, this person is sick or ill and should
Right.
go to a hospital. They should be locked up in jail for forever. And he is going to be locked up forever. That's another reason why I like mentioning hate crime laws, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Which
like
are
the
not
hate
good,
cri-
by the way.
Well,
They come
yeah.
for some people. They come from a good place, maybe, but they're not good.
Like hate crime laws. First of all, most of the hate crime laws are for for vandalism and assaults, because you don't need to enhance a sentence on
Right.
when you do 8 murders. You're just
Right.
not getting out of jail. You don't need to charge someone with a hate crime when they murder a bunch of people. Dylan Roof didn't need to be charged with a hate crime. He's just never getting out. So the hate crime laws are really to enhance, so when you spray paint graffiti and it's your tag, or when you spray paint a swastika
Right.
on a mosque, those are treated as two
Right.
separate crimes. That's really what the hate crime law is for. And again, it is a carceral
that's-
solution.
No,
So
right.
we're in cop
Yeah.
brain and cop
Yeah.
world, prosecutorial world, when we're talking and thinking about this. And I think we're talking about politics. We're talking about solutions. We're talking about white supremacy. No, we're kind of talking about court cases. We're talking
Right.
about court cases.
But the
Yeah,
thing is
and-
that with sorry, Dan.
No, go. Oh, I was just gonna say. Well, it's really hard for me to take after the Fredo incident to hear Chris Cuomo pontificating
Experience
about
racism
race
like he does
at
Yeah.
all. Yes.
Yes.
But then hearing him talk about sex workers and you can find Asian women anywhere else and different kinds also gave me creep vibes and racist vibes. But
Yeah.
then, yeah, exactly, Leslie, what you were saying about the crime, the true crime portrayal of all this. Using a counterterrorism expert, first of all, the
Yes.
idea counterterrorism in and of itself is it is literally rooted in racism. The war
Yes,
on terror
yes,
that proliferated built up to this too. I mean, we can't disconnect how Arab peoples, Muslim practicing peoples were terrorized by a racist project, a racist and draconian project from the state called the War on Terror. I mean, that is so important, but to treat this as the whole domestic terrorism thing is very flawed, as always. But then, when it comes to, what you were saying about the true crime, it's all about getting away from their own culpability, because as they do this, just 24 hours, 48 hours, they're talking about a gender, equality hating, Jew hating, Muslim hating, Adrian Zenz, using his sources as some kind of China expert about Xinjiang and about the plight of Muslims in China, when he himself is a rapture-loving, neocon, think tank occupying, racist, racist. I mean, that's the hypocrisy of it all, in my opinion.
But so this was what's so interesting to me about this clip, right? Is that at least that guy, the what is he, counterterrorism guy? That's his job, right? Leslie, you're saying they're not talking about politics. It's a crime show. Yeah, that's his job, right?
That's his job.
But Cuomo is trying to act like this, cultural anthropologist, criminologist, sociologist. And so listen to so he already said that weird thing. We'll play back a little bit more. But I also think there's a weird dynamic that happens here. 1 second. Let's just.
He picked these, and it makes me wonder.
Oh my God. He's like, I don't do that one. Okay. Hold on.
He encountered sex workers in a lot of places. He could have to go to these places and have to kill these women. He didn't have to go to these places. He didn't have to pick mostly Asian women. You know, he could have encountered sex workers in a lot of places. He could have killed lots of different kinds of people. He picked these, and it makes me wonder if over time you go to this implicit. You go to this unconscious.
Implicit.
You go to
You know, that is the implicit bias. Thank you to IAT test and Hillary Clinton.
the fact that he is just absorbing animus from somewhere, and he doesn't even really articulate it.
Okay, so watch this guy trying to be like, what the fuck are you talking about, Chris Cuomo? Because I don't know what he's talking about.
No, I think that's dead on. Look at a couple questions you would face. First of all, there are stories out about whether he was going to visit locations in Florida. My first question, which I haven't seen answered, were those places that were run by Asian Americans? At that point, I start to say, this looks way too suspicious. The second point goes right to what you said. Let's say this individual believes himself and is telling investigators this was a sexually
It is worth
motivated
mentioning
crime.
most true crime
But
cops
let's
aren't
say
smart
after
either. He
several
said he
days
looks
of
suspicious
investigation, we
after
start-
the 8 murders. That looks suspicious after.
Yeah.
Weird.
Something's not adding up
to
here. Something's
determine
weird.
he identified sex with Asian.
Oh, is that done? Ah,
I have a sex addiction, so
All
I
right.
had to go to these places. and
that's
have
a
to
funny
kill
thing
these
to
women.
clip.
I know.
This was a sexually motivated crime.
So remember
So
he
at
was
that
saying
point,
like
I
we don't
start
know
to-
yet? Didn't he just say like a minute ago that it was too early? You couldn't
This
diagnose
looks
it yet?
way
Well,
too
he doesn't know.
suspicious.
Like when you
Cases-
do these spots, like you get mixed up. You have
Right,
to
you're like, who am I trying to pick?
like which day
right.
is it? Like which day of coverage is it? Because if it's the first or second day, you have to say that we don't know. But if it's
Right.
the third or fourth day, then you
This was-
can
yeah.
just dive in and explain the motive. He is being like, this is what he
he's
does.
flexible.
But yeah, but this is like court TV. This is
Yeah.
not like anything else. This is
Right.
just sensational, exploitative.
Yeah.
I love true crime, but like it is
I have a
like
theory
it's not
that-
real. It's not a real thing. You
Of
know?
course. I think that I have a theory that Cuomo texted him after he said that and like told him to change the story. We'll have to watch again another time.
that were run by Asian Americans. At
But
that
by the way,
point,
were they Asian Americans or Asians who ran these places? Because I feel like it's one of those things where everyone's saying Asian Americans, the way that like Ezra Klein called Steve McQueen, the director, the Black British director, African American. Anyway, that's another
Unclear.
issue. Unclear. Okay, but let me just.
I start to say, this looks way too suspicious.
Oh my God.
My first question, which I haven't seen answered, were those places that were run by Asian Americans? At that point, I start to say, this looks way too suspicious. The second point goes right to what you said. Let's say this individual believes himself and is telling investigators this was a sexually motivated crime. But let's say after several days of investigation, we start to determine he identified sex with Asian.
Oh my God. Okay. I really want to hear this guy's thoughts on the intersection between.
He identified sex with Asian Americans. The story starts to change, and again, going back to why he did this.
This is so fucking
Amber, let's
annoying.
listen to the
How do I-
something else this sheriff said today. I'll get your take on it. Go ahead.
Whatever. Anyway, I think this whole thing is weird, and I don't really think that. I felt like Cuomo really was like pushing him to say something, and then afterwards Cuomo did all this like solidaristic stuff with that woman, but it just doesn't really like. It's. I mean, it's the type of stuff that is just performative. Doesn't like imagine for a second he talked about any of this, like the new Cold War, what is being said or done in China, or how all this stuff existed before Trump.
Yeah, someone mentioned in the chat his brother killed more people than than this
way
spree
more
killer.
people and Asian and a lot of Asian
Way
people
more Asian
because
people.
Yeah.
A lot of
of,
Asian people.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
It's true. Yeah, I mean, the FBI. I mean, this is also a problem with the true crime way of approaching this, and the FBI. I mean, the FBI and these intelligence agencies and the media—they're writing the narrative and the case as it's happening. You know,
yes.
that's what they always do. That's what they did. You know, Boston bombing, any so-called terrorist incident. That's what they do because it's all about cleaning it up to make it palatable so people will accept not talking about the new Cold War in China. I've gotten a lot of flack for this. I mean, a lot of people on social media, this is separate. It's separate from the new Cold War in China. There's no aggression against China from the United States. China is the bad guy. This is only about the coronavirus. All of this manipulating of the narrative is really about getting away from any kind of culpability in it, right? Biden, Chris Cuomo, all of them, they're looking to come out of this as the heroes when in fact they have been pushing the exact narratives which create the intensification, right? Because it existed before, but it gets pushed on when there is this broader, almost unitary problem of the pandemic, of China being a complete affront to U.S. values and the existence of the United States itself. That's what a lot of people think. The new Gallup poll that just came out shows that 80% of people in the United States have a negative opinion on China. 45% believe that China is the number one adversary of the United States. And this continues to go up. And more than half of people in the United States believe, I know you mentioned this a little bit, Leslie, that China should pay reparations to the United States because of COVID-19. That is how deep this goes. But when we think about it as this, what is this individual's motivation? Is it this? Is it that? Is this a terrorism problem? Is this a law enforcement problem? Is this a hate problem? We're completely missing the larger implications of all of this. And this will continue to happen. As you said, Leslie, just talking about it like this continues to stoke the tensions. It's kind of like when Trump was in office. I mean, technically it's still being done, but Trump was just the center of attention. Everything he was doing was being given all of the attention, even if it was negative press, right? It was just constant attention, 24/7, him and Russia, him and whatever he said about Mexicans, all of it was just given 24/7 coverage. And it doesn't help the problem by just sensationalizing it and making it into a very profitable story. It doesn't help.
And to be clear, that's all they do. They stretch this out. Like when when Trump says specifically something racist, it wasn't like just this swift condemnation. It was like, let's get a panel together of 6 people to kind of talk around the issue, and then let's get another panel, all day long, never actually moving any sort of conversation forward, never making any kind of statement, just this constant like background noise and babble, which is fine as long as you don't call it like news, like this is true crime, this is sports cover, this is like Sports Center for people who view politics as sports. It's not really like actual news connected to the real like world and our real life. And I think that's just the problem is like so many people believe that this is like real, not that this isn't real event, but this is like the real way to talk about them, and this is where the real action, this is where real action is going to take place. It's going to be, condemning this one individual, this one murderer, and forgetting all the other stuff and completely disconnecting it from any kind of larger issue.
And I'll just give a little personal aside. Like growing up, I mean, before I became, racially ambiguous, people have a hard time now when they look at me. But when I was younger, it wasn't so hard for kids. But when I look back at all my experiences, almost every single experience with this kind of phenomenon, whether, being called names, robbed of my things and punked, all of this stuff, I think about the references were all references to war. I mean, how many times have I heard, oh, did your mom's family hide underground like the Gooks did? All of this stuff, it is direct references to war. All of whatever racism you hear is a direct reference to something systemic, and it's not something that's abstract. I think a lot of this conversation becomes abstract when it's just hate. People hate. No, there are real interests at work that people are caught up in, and we have to confront it in that way if we hope to not only reduce this kind of violence, but also get to the source of the problem. The source of the problem is that the Pentagon spends half of all of its resources surrounding China and the Asia Pacific, terrorizing and neo-colonizing nations all over that region, risking the potential for nuclear war, and creating a political environment globally which is just completely against any ideas and notions of progress itself. Can't address climate change, can't address racism, can't address war, can't address poverty, because China, we got Russia, but DPRK, all of these countries, these orientalized countries, they are in fact the enemy, and this lives with us every single day as we move through society. That's the problem in my estimation.
Okay. Well, guys, I would love to have you on again. We should do an extended chat. I do have to go to sleep early tonight and get my vaccine tomorrow. My second vaccine tomorrow. Oh, here we go. Where's that guy who calls me privileged for getting the vaccine because I have fucking asthma?
He thought you used your podcast clout to skip.
I was like, hi, this is Katie Halper here. I'm pretty sure you have a vaccine for me. Yes, that Katie Halper. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is great. This is amazing. This is great. Couple things I want to say. One is, where's that funny comment that someone said it's the height of irony that, like, to watch the brother of someone who's been accused of sexual misconduct talk about, like, sex work? Let's see. Hi, Phil. Thanks for coming on. I don't have that thing. Does anyone have it? So it can be a good one. Anyway, so I can actually say it. Oh, look you're trying to show off Taco, right? He's really cute. He's really cute. But, okay, here's the thing. Couple announcements. One is that Saturday, I will be doing, before I do the thing with Leslie, I'm going to be doing this free Assange telethon that Jen Perelman and I are co-hosting from 1:30 to 7 p.m. We're going to do some rotating, don't worry. John Kiriakou, Medea Benjamin, Kevin Gostola, Lee Camp, Ronnie Calic, Ron Placone, Jordan Sheridan, Kate Willett, Ryan Knight, Marjorie Cohn, Norman Solomon, Shahid Buttar, and Chris Hedges. And then also, I don't know if you guys saw it yet, but we put out our first Useful Idiots, and we're going to get you an RSS feed soon. But for now, just go to usefulidiots.substack.com, and you can see we've already released an interview we did with Daniel Ellsberg, which is very interesting. And we have our Substack only video up there and the Substack only audio. So everything is free, and then there's extra that you can get if you pay for it. Anything else I need to make sure that I mention? Do we get any more Patreon subscribers during this? If so, I will thank them. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. Really appreciate you guys coming here on Sunday. Malika Jabali is going to be on the show on Sunday, which is cool. Awesome. Also, thank you so much, Dr. Skullhead. Thank you very much for becoming a patron. Thank you so much, Jared, for editing your gift, raising that Patreon level. And thank you, Dan R, for, I think I knew you. Thank you, Dan, for becoming a patron. And I think that's it, but everyone who did that is a great person. And everyone who's here is a great person. And we'll have Leslie and Danny back on the show. We're going to have to keep it short tonight, by which I mean, for me, short is what? We've only gone
2.5 hours.
2.5 hours, yeah. Which is a nice tight 2.5 hours. I'm trying to see if there are any. Thank you, Michelle Langlois, for the super sticker. Thank you, David, for saying Danny Haiphong brought truth. Murphy, thank you for W07. Murphy, thanks again. Nadeem for always interesting guests. Thank you. And thank you again so much to Brad, Kelly, Maria, Nick, and our guests. Oh my God, look at Taco.
I know.
Wow. Wait, you're searching your make. I know. Okay, here it is. Ready? It's here. Let me just do the. Hold on. Usefulidiots.substack.com. Hold on. Here it is, guys. Usefulidiots.substack.com. I'm going to put that in there. There we go. And then here's what it looks like. Great interview with big surprise, New Yorker. New Yorker did not print an article that Daniel Ellsberg of the Pentagon Papers that he wrote in response to Malcolm Gladwell, which got a lot of stuff wrong. Yeah, here it is. So here's our Useful Idiot Substack, okay? Now you know. It's I don't know. That was Matt's write-up. I think the headline missed some basically, the interesting part is that Ellsberg is not your good Snowden, because he resents how much, I don't want to give it away, but he resents how much people try to use him as the good whistleblower to condemn Snowden and Assange and Manning as the bad ones. And Malcolm Gladwell, if you're watching this, you said he served in North Korea. He was in North Carolina. You probably should correct that. Not to mention that he wrote a whole response. The guy of the Pentagon Papers wrote a response to your piece of crap essay about him, that he was too nice to bring this up, but that also had major factual errors. Leslie Lee gets really upset by that, so he has to just leave.
Yeah, totally.
I think he got disconnected. But anyway, where can people find you, Danny, and all your work?
Yeah, sure. So you can follow me at Spirit of Ho on Twitter. Find me on Black Agenda Report each week at www.blackagendareport.com. A lot of what we talk about is on Black Agenda Report. Also follow No Cold War, the organization. Also follow Black Alliance for Peace, because they're at the forefront of opposing a lot of this. And then if you can, join my Patreon at patreon.com/Danny Haiphong, where I do, as much as I can otherwise.
Yeah. Great. And Leslie, we already know about you.
Yeah, check us out at Struggle Session, patreon.com/struggle session. Check us out live on twitch.tv/struggle session. Tomorrow at noon, we will have a very exciting guest.
And Danny, next time you're on, you put your Patreon in there.
Yeah, I should have.
It's okay. People will follow you now. You got that Katie Halper Show bump. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank
everyone.
you so much, Katie. Thanks,
Bye.
Leslie.
All right, guys.
All right.
I will see you.
I am getting my first dose tomorrow, so.
Oh, wait, you're still on. You're still on.
Yeah,
Danny.
no.
It's okay. You didn't say anything that bad. You're like, oh my God, I just wrote a big think piece about how hard it is to be someone who's not going to get a dose for 17,000 weeks. All right, bye, guys. I'll end this now. Bye, guys. Rate and review, subscribe, like, share, and we'll see you Sunday night. Malika Jabali's going to be on the show, and this is the Katie Halper Show. Thanks for listening. Bye.